Rhythm was his business, and he did it well. Although you went to your blue heaven over 70 years ago, your songs and films are still around, entertaining another generation of unsuspecting yet joyful fans. However, it could be said that you are the true most known unknown. No disrespect to 3-6 Mafia, just rhyme and reason, unsung in glee. So you started the first Memphis and Shelby County schools, jazz music education program without help or money from the miseducation system at Manassas High. Even today they still act like they don't have any money for the youthful masses, unless when it comes to paying off incompetent gatekeepers, cronies, and other useless assets. You took 9 young, ambitious, and eager boys from New Chicago and North Memphis and made them anew and into men by sharing your love and gift of music. Your band of merry men, including your buddies from Fisk University, left the comforts of Memphis and Manassas High School in 1934, perceived greener, greater, and jazzier pastures to parts unknown, even to you and your crew. In spite of lack of funds, you were determined to make your mark by playing with the house's money. A true game of chance with the will to be free. Your drive and insistence outweighed financial difficulties and man's indifference. Through true hustle and flow, you became the #1 jazz band for all African Americans in the land, earning the nickname the Harlem Express. Your band started to broadcast live from the good old Cotton Club in the year of our Lord 1934, and you became the American Idol of Miles Davis, Quincy Jones, Glenn Miller, and many, many more. Your genius in action was immortalized in film while your orchestra played blues in the night. You, General Lunceford, led a music revolution in swing time and created a jazz-nocracy. Your band was the biggest attraction at the Apollo Theater for 10 straight years and was the first to play an integrated audience at the Paramount Theater. You were the toast of the town, the king of New York. You were the master and commander, as well as the undisputed champ of the Battle of the Bands. Your band was considered the greatest by the masses, not chicks, not dukes, not even counts mattered. You was a king uncrowned with no country to rule, and yet you still practiced the golden rule. You never forgot your roots and went back to plant more seeds with the glee and joy of a Johnny Appleseed. And my oh my, look at the beautiful fruits your tree bears. The Rhythm Bombers, Isaac Hayes, Booker T. Jones, Dee Dee Bridgewater's Booker, Little Spinniest Newborns, George Coleman's, Captain Perry Thomas, Arthur Lee's, Charles Lloyd's, Emerson Abel's, Maurice White's, Larry Lee's, and Johnny Ace's, oh my! And yes, indeed, so much more. You just didn't climb mountains, you also flew over them. You flew and owned your own airplane at a time, when the government tried not to teach the Tuskegee Airmen how to fly, kill and die for good old Uncle Sam. You always embraced equality and never inequity, always strive for excellence and never settled for mediocrity. Your dreams and ambitions knew no bounds or limitations. You was on top of the world until a racist, hate-mongering white man snatched your life with Apollo Sandman-like efficiency. The curtains closed and the lights went dim once you left the stage. Use your God-given gifts to warm humanity's heart and soul. And yet the city of good abode has left one of her favorite sons forgotten and out in the cold. Where's the brass note on Beale? Where are the markers? Where are the eulogies? Where's the outrage? Where's the love? Why so much indifference and hostility? They are still missing. However, One day in the heat of the August night in the 60th year of your passing, an artivist had an epiphany. Resurrect Jimmie's memory by teaching his story to the citizens who can't even recall his memory or shamefully neglect history. What can profit a people if they have no identity? The hope endures, the dream never dies, and the beat goes on. Lunceford lives, the rhythm of life is our business.
Guess who's back? Back again. Brother Ron. Tell your friends. Guess who's back and still black? Guess who's back and still black? Cause I'm proud to be of American. I'm proud and I'm free and I'll stand up. Welcome everybody to another wonderful entertaining edition of We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. I'm your host, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2H2, the artivist for this empowerment segment. Hope everybody is well out there, taking good care of yourself, because you are indeed precious cargo, and we all be in it to win it. There's a lot going on as usual in the news cycle. That was my Jimmie Lunceford. Rhythm was his business. The rhythm of life is his business, or something like that. That's my Jimmie Lunceford tune. Actually, July 21st, 1947 was his homegoing celebration in Memphis, Tennessee. James Melvin Lunceford, really, who was the real king of swing and the father of jazz education, of jazz studies. He's the first person credited in the history of the world to teach jazz studies in a formal educational setting. So I just want to give that ancestor some shine tonight. And also we had Nolan Wells. He had his homegoing celebration on Monday, July 20th. And Dick told me about these magic glasses, man, that the universe so God gave me. I can't take them off. I can't make y'all see what I see, but I can explain what I am seeing right now, which is interesting. The patterns, things come up. I've been really enjoying rather, watching and listening to people's takes on this Nolan Wells situation. It's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. And it got me to think about a lot of stuff, because like it's a lot of stuff that we don't know. But I told what Baba Gregory would tell me, Baba Dick Gregory, you pray at noon for the truth to come out. So I, did that at Sister Thea's grave, I believe the week after Nolan Wells situation. Like after that 4th of July weekend, I went to Elmwood's Sister Thea's resting place, Elmwood Cemetery in Memphis, which is, I call it Sister Thea's place. And Sister Thea is about to be a saint recognized by the church. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to be in the place in Rome and the Vatican City where that happens. I think that's going to happen soon. But I want to talk about something here. Y'all know the title of today's show, of course. I can find it. Strange Fruit USA. The Curious Cases of Mississippi Native Sons, Jimmie Lunceford and Nolan Wells. That's Jimmie Melvin Lunceford, or James Melvin Lunceford, and Nolan Xavier Wells, right? Nolan's nickname was No. They'll call Jimmie Lunceford, I think, Piggy. He's calling Piggy because he was about that bank, what I'm saying? He had this bank and rank. And this is interesting, man, because same playbook, different players, right? Same playbook, different players. And it really crossed my mind. I found it fascinating because Jimmie Lunceford made this transition under very questionable circumstances at Seaside, Oregon, July 12th, 1947. Nolan Wells made his transition under questionable circumstances at Horn Island, Mississippi, of 2026. That was July the 4th, 5th, or whatever. Sometime in July, either the 4th of July or the 5th of July or the 6th of July. We don't know yet. In 2026, under questionable circumstances, both of these men are sons of Mississippi, our native sons of Mississippi. Jimmie actually was born in Mississippi in the Evergreen community outside of Fulton, Mississippi, back on June the 6th, 1902. Evergreen was a community where Black folks owned their land. He come from a very well-connected Black family owning land people. Black family land owning people. To this day, his kinfolk still got land out there in Evergreen where they got their homes and whatnot. I made a visit there about 9 years ago, talked to one of his relatives about Jimmie Lunceford and their family interests and legacies. So Jimmie Lunceford was born in Mississippi, but was raised actually in Denver, Colorado. And he was a music prodigy. Also, he was a exceptional athlete like Nolan Wells. He actually was a standout in football and baseball and track. And also he could box well. From my understanding, he was a pretty good boxer. And Nolan Wells, like, he was a very capable brother, athletic person, football player, basketball and baseball, according to his father. So I just found it interesting. Like, Jimmie died under questionable circumstances at 45 years young. We lost Nolan at 18 years young. Both of their age at the time of death adds up to the number 9. 9 is the number of completions, of beginnings and endings. In terms of beginning a cycle, ending cycles is the number of completion. The end of something and the start of something. You want to be started something, got to be started something. I'm not starting anything. I'm just provoking thought. I'm a thought provocateur. And, Dick Gregory called me the feeder. I'm the feeder. So I want to feed y'all this information, but I thought it's interesting both of these brothers died when they died at 45 years young and also 18 years young. But there's nothing new under the sun. So I think about this, right? Jimmie Lunceford was a football coach. He was a football. It's something about football and the Illuminati and these strange deaths. It's like a lot of people connected to football over the years have died interesting deaths, questionable deaths, right? I'm not going to go all over the smorgasbord or all over deep into the rabbit hole on this one about that. But Jimmie Lunceford was a jazz great. He was actually more popular than Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Cab Calloway. He was the number one band for Black people in America back in the 30s and 40s. And what's amazing about his story is the fact that his swing band at the nucleus consisted of his best high school students and buddies from Fisk University. He also had a college band. He worked very popular in Nashville. He went to Fisk University. He majored, I believe, in sociology and I think music as well, but I know sociology. He majored in. He was Fisk University class of 1926. His love boo thing was Yolanda Du Bois, the only daughter of W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who's the father of American sociology, who was also a Fisk man before he graduated from Harvard, but he did not approve of their relationship. He didn't care for Jimmie Lunceford, even though Jimmie Lunceford was a Fisk man, like this man. And he was very well-respected brother. He was tall, dark, and handsome and very educated. Dr. Du Bois didn't like the fact that he was a secular musician, that he was a jazz musician. It's kind of like, I guess, a jazz musician would be like a rapper today, but I think it'll be an insult to say that to a jazz musician over 100 years ago. Actually, he graduated 100 years ago this year from Fisk. I'm just thinking about that. He was class of 1926. So Du Bois did not approve of his daughter's man. So he got rid of him and replaced him with County Cullen, who was the poet laureate of the Harlem Renaissance. Like, County Cullen was a prodigy, a brilliant poet, literary guy, wordsmith, kind of like a Tiger Woods or Williams sisters type of cat. Very gifted with his words. So they had the wedding of the decade. You know, Du Bois had this elaborate wedding for his wife, for his daughter, excuse me, and County Cullen, and like, you know, the who's who of Black society, of the elites, you know, of the Harlem Renaissance came out for that wedding. But the problem was is that County Cullen was in love with his best man more than his woman. His best man was a brother named Harold Jackman, who was a teacher in the school system up in New York, and also a well-known model. He was known as the finest man in Harlem. Y'all can Google that up yourselves to see if that's true or not. But he was, you know, he had good looks, a very good-looking guy, very intelligent guy. But he was allegedly the love interest, the true love interest of County Cullen. The marriage was annulled, you know, and she ended up marrying a second time. But Jimmie Lunceford always had love for her. Like, she ended up having a daughter with a football player, but she ended up dying relatively young back in the early 60s. She ended up being like I want to say an English teacher in Baltimore, Maryland, and she's actually buried at her father's birthplace in Great Barrington, I believe, alongside her mom. You know, Dr. Du Bois is actually buried over in Ghana, in Accra. They got a shrine to that brother. One of my cousins, my cousin-in-law was Dr. Ana Olivia Cordero. She was the personal physician to Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois during the last 2 years or so of his life. So that's my family connection. Also, my grandma, my father's mother, she actually performed with the Jimmie Lunceford Orchestra when she was part of a high school female singing band back in the day. She told me about that back in 2013, that she actually performed for the Jimmie Lunceford Orchestra when they came to Kansas. So I'm learning all this stuff. Like, the righteous ancestors are busy. They want to hear from us. Jimmie want to hear from us. But I'm going to tell his story tonight, a little bit of what I know about his mysterious circumstances of his death. Yeah, he had the greatest swing band of his era. Like, Glenn Miller said that Jimmie Lunceford had he was the greatest. You know, Duke is Duke and Count is Count, but he said Lunceford tops them both in terms of presentation. Like, he had a show band. It wasn't that they had they had a unique sound. They had the Lunceford 2 beat, but also tailor-made suits. The band can dance. Them guys would be dancing. They would sing, they would tell jokes. The trumpet section would throw their trumpets in the air and catch them where they left off at and play. It was all about precision, and showtime. They had discipline. They were known as the trained seals because of their execution, but also they was known as the Harlem Express because they was the most popular band for Black America back in the 30s and 40s. Jimmie Lunceford was the big dog, and everybody wanted that sound. They wanted that presentation. He was the music hero of Miles Davis and Quincy Jones and some other people. And so he used to broadcast live from the Cotton Club. You know, CBS would broadcast him live from the Cotton Club. He was the band after Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway at the Cotton Club. His band was the #1 attraction for Black people at the Apollo Theater for a whole decade. He was one of the first bands to integrate his bands. He had blacks and whites playing in his band. You know, they always talking about Benny Goodman doing it, but Jimmie Lunceford actually did it. He arguably had the first recorded electric guitar solo in jazz history. That was his band that did that. It was with Eddie Durham, the great Eddie Durham, on Hitting the Bottle. Because everybody hits the bottle except for Jimmie. Jimmie didn't drink or smoke. He was a teetotaler, as they call them. So I don't think he was a drinker or smoker. We're going to talk about what happened to him. But he had a lot of firsts, right? The father of jazz studies. He did that as a volunteer at Manassas High School back in the 20s. He was not hired to be the music teacher. He was hired, I think, to be like the football coach, phys ed, English teacher, anything but the music teacher. But he was a sociology major in college, and he saw that music was a way to serve as a rites of passage to help transform Black boys and girls into adults. He used it as a rites of passage, but also music was a way to also bring the community together, because Like I said, he was a volunteer. I mean, he wasn't hired to be no music instructor, but he got the community engaged in the project. Their band was known as the Chickasaw Syncopators. Yeah, y'all talking about black folks being native to the land now, but Jimmie Lunceford overstood black folks' relationship to the land. He knew about his actual heritage. Like I said, his folks still own a lot of land in Mississippi to this day. And a lot of us be looking down on Mississippi and stuff like that. But Malcolm told us years ago, brother Malcolm X told us years ago, anything south of Canada is Mississippi. Chicago's Mississippi, Los Angeles, Mississippi, New York City's Mississippi. So y'all talking about this state, this Magnolia state, like it's like an exception to the American rule. America is a sundown country. USA is a sundown country. Forget a sundown town or a sundown county. This is a sundown country. So I'm trying to get y'all hip to what's going on, because I like the Nolan Wells thing, but a lot of people are regurgitating stuff. Like a lot of people are repeating things. A lot of people doing things for clicks, likes, and views, which is not a bad thing. I think everybody should have a right to make a living. If it bleeds, it leads type of mentality. This is the American way. We're capitalists. And if you don't think you're a capitalist, and you are sadly mistaken, because while you are participating in paying your rent and buying groceries and being exploited, you are indeed a capitalist. Whether you be a poor capitalist or a rich capitalist, you are nonetheless a capitalist, because as long as you pay tax in a system like this, you are actively or passively participating in your own exploitation. So with that said, bringing it back, I'm just is okay. I got my mic. Let's make sure my mic working. But we're very ahistorical. We're very illiterate. A lot of us don't read. We don't read for knowledge. We don't read for fun anymore. A lot of us can't read. That's a crazy thing, because we say we're not our ancestors. And I agree with us, because within 20 years of the end of the Civil War, the most literate and skilled group of people in America was former enslaved black people. Black people was the most skilled and educated people in America 20 years after the Civil War. 20 years after the Civil War, they started unions to keep black folks from being gainfully employed. They created the U.S. Patent Office to keep black folks from registering their inventions, to get intellectual property acknowledged and generational wealth created. These are not things I'm making up in my head. These are things that could be easily tracked. Google is your friend of me. Google is your friend of me. You can look at all this stuff. Take a look. It's all online. But I'm doing this. I'm laying this out. People say, well, cause y'all, Nolan Wells. I'm gonna get to the Nolan Wells angle and tie all this up. But I'm trying to lay this stuff out for the people. I think it's very important that I lay this out for the people to make this case, to know that history don't necessarily always repeats, but it rhymes. It can rhyme. It may not always repeat, but same playbook, different players. So I'm just laying it out for Jimmie. So Jimmie was very popular, very innovative, and he also loved black people. Like, even when he became famous big time and made a lot of money, when he would come back to Memphis and set out church auditorium on Beale Street or whatever, he would come back to Manassas High School, where he started his band, and give free music concerts as well as musician clinics for the people in the high school band. One of my dear friends, the Manassas Rhythm Bombers, one of my dear friends, my Jegna Emerson A.L.L Jr., was very appreciative of Jimmie Lunceford's people coming back to invest in community. Mr. Emerson A.L.L Jr. was a gifted music educator and musician, gifted swimmer. He was a Renaissance man, was an excellent calligrapher, all that stuff. And I say all this to say this because he told me himself that he was really influenced on his saxophone, on his tenor saxophone, by Jimmie Lunceford's great tenor man, Joe Thomas from Kansas City. And so it stuck with him. So he became of age. He actually got a full scholarship to attend Tennessee State University back in the day. He was one of the best swimmers in the whole state of Tennessee, black or white. Mr. Emerson A.L.L was like a tadpole. He was a short man for big head, big forehead, big brains. But very talented, very spirited, passionate dude. So he went to school on full swimming scholarship, on full ride swimming scholarship to Tennessee State University. Ended up becoming a band director, did collegiate bands as well as high school. Actually came back to his alma mater where Jimmie Lunceford started his music organization to teach their band. He was the band director at Manassas High School when Isaac Hayes was going to Manassas High School. Mr. A.L.L kicked Isaac Hayes out the band. He kicked the Isaac Hayes, Black Moses, as y'all know him. He kicked him out the band. He ended up working for Isaac Hayes at Stax, a part of the Isaac Hayes movement. He did watch Stax, ended up working for Sammy Davis Jr. Mr. A.L.L got around. Very brilliant man. But he will always tell me himself that, Ron, nobody dies a natural death in show business. He said, nobody dies a natural death in show business. He'll tell me stories about Otis Redding and Al Jackson Jr. and people like that who died these interesting deaths. And he always said there's another side to it. Nobody dies a natural death in show business. So Mr. A.L.L ended up becoming the co-creator and founder of what is now known as the Southern Heritage Classic. He actually created the idea for the Southern Heritage Classic in his living room. And people that's from Memphis in this area, Jackson State, Tennessee State, Arkansas State, I think Pine Bluff, y'all know what the Southern Heritage Classic is. It's a big thing in September that they have, and Mr. A.L.L was a part of that because he had the connections to the different HBCUs. He was a band director at the collegiate and high school levels. So he actually had the connections to make that happen. I know Fred Jones, one of the co-founders of the Southern Heritage Classic. A lot of people focus and celebrate on him, but I always make it a point on my platform and wherever I am in the world to acknowledge Mr. A.L.'s amazing contribution to that extraordinary event for some people. And also, what I love about Mr. A.L. is that he did something what Dick Gregory would tell me. Baba Dick Gregory used to tell me that when he encountered young parents, young couples that had a child, he was always telling them to get some instrument training, teach them, let them learn how to play a piano or something, because that way they can get a full ride scholarship somewhere. They don't have to necessarily become a full-time professional musician, but that could lead them to doors being open, whereas they may not be open for them to get a higher education. So Mr. A.L., to his credit, helped send a lot of young boys and girls to college. A lot of people I have met over the years have benefited from Mr. A.L.'s ability to invest in them and to help train them to be the best they could be on their instrument, but also show up as the best they could be in life. And really, that's the Lunceford spirit, because he used music as a way to discipline people to become focused and professional, and also to be grown, to help them mature. I remember I talked to Catherine Perry Thomas, Manassas class. I think it was a Manassas High School class of 1932. Her brother actually played with Mr. Lunceford in high school. He was a saxophonist. His name was, I think, Andrew Perry, if I'm not mistaken. He actually turned pro with Jimmie Lunceford, but she used to rehearse her piano while the band would practice. Like, she remembered recalling, playing her piano, rehearsing her piano while the band would be practicing in the same space. And Mr. Lunceford actually left Manassas High School in Memphis in 1930, and 4 years later, he was the house band at the Cotton Club. So I'm saying, like, this is, bro, you give him a lot of stuff, verbiage. But I'm trying to show you who his man was, right? This dude was so cool, man. Jimmie Lunceford took flying lessons in 1939. 1940, he bought his first plane. People always talk about James Brown buying his plane, right? People always talk about James Brown being the first black person, I guess black celebrity or person in America to buy a private jet. Jimmie Lunceford actually brought his own plane in 1940 during the Great Depression. This dude had enough walking around money. That's how successful he was. He had enough walking around money where he could buy his own plane in 1940 during the Great Depression. And his plane would cost in today's money close to like $500,000, something like that, around there. And He would actually fly himself to his gigs. Duke Ellington wasn't doing that. Count Basie wasn't doing that. Cab Calloway, Chick Webb, they wasn't flying their own planes to gigs. He actually crashed his plane and was able to walk away from a plane crash. This guy was next level, most interesting man in the world. You understand? And it didn't work out with Yolanda Du Bois, but he ended up marrying a classmate of theirs that went to Fisk University. This Memphis beauty named Crystal Tully. That became his wifey. She was an AKA like Yolanda Du Bois. I think I'm saying Yolanda or Yolande. She got an E at the end. Yolanda. Y'all get what I'm saying. Du Bois is the only daughter. She was an AKA, from my understanding. Crystal Tully was an AKA. Jimmie Lunceford was a Kappa. He was a Kappa. He was a pretty boy. That made sense. He was tall, dark, and handsome, so he was a Kappa. And they got married. And she actually was an English teacher at the Booker T. Washington High School. That's the same high school in Memphis that produced the likes of Marion Barry, DC's lifetime mayor for life, Marion Barry. He went to Booker T. Washington High School in South Memphis. That's also the same high school that produced D. Maurice White, the architect, the founder, the visionary behind Earth, Wind, and Fire. They always talk about his Chicago thing, but he went to high school in Booker T. Washington High School in Memphis, Tennessee, on the south side. So you got, and not only that, Lucy Campbell taught at Booker T. Washington for decades. She is the mother of gospel music. She helped train the likes of Marian Anderson, the great opera singer, and helped train Mahalia Jackson. This is the mother of gospel music. They were all there around the same time in one high school in South Memphis. Y'all don't know about no Memphis, man. Y'all really don't get Memphis. Y'all don't understand the allure and the obsession with other people about Memphis. They always trying to paint it in a bad light. Memphis create a lot of master teachers. A lot of master teachers come out of Memphis. You know, you look at Reverend A.L.L. Sharpton, if he's a part of that Kojic tradition, Church of God in Christ was created in Memphis back in 1907 by Bishop Charles Mason, who was a Memphian, a Memphite from Shelby County. Memphis helped produce its fair share of pimps, preachers, and lawyers. Sometimes it could be one person with all three professions combined. So we have produced our fair share of pimps, preachers, and lawyers. You understand? You know that saxophone sound that people are using online, that social media, that saxophone sound from Boys in the Hood, that's actually Kirk Whalen's saxophone. He was hired by Stanley Clark and John Singleton to be on the Boys in the Hood soundtrack. Kirk Whalum is from Memphis. Kirk Whalum is the saxophone solo, the famous saxophone solo on Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You. That's Kirk Whalum. He's Memphis born and bred, come from a very powerful musical family. Kirk Whalum's grandfather was actually Jimmie Lunceford's best friend. His name was H.D. Whalum Sr., and I believe he was a Kappa. And this story gets crazy. H.D. Whalum Jr. heard about Jimmie Lunceford passing, right? He was actually on his way back home from Kentucky to sing at Jimmie Lunceford's homegoing in Memphis. Got into a car accident, unfortunately. Ended up dying in a hospital in Kentucky the same day that they was laying Jimmie Lunceford to rest, which was July 21st, 1947. So he perished on the same day they was laying Jimmie Lunceford to rest in Memphis. Supposed to be at his funeral to sing farewell to his dear friend. He died in Fulton County, Kentucky, or Fulton, Kentucky, at their hospital. The reason why I bring that up, which is fascinating, Jimmie Lunceford was born in Fulton, Mississippi, and his best friend dies in Fulton, Kentucky. Who's writing these scripts? I'm telling you all this to say. And also Kirk Whalum's nephews, like Scooter and I think Cameron, right? Scooter is a saxophonist, like his uncle. Scooter was the saxophone solo at the end of a Rock Boys on American Gangster soundtrack, Jay-Z Rock Boys. That's Scooter Whalum. That's Memphis. His brother Cameron is a trombonist. He plays with Bruno Mars. He's part of their Hooligans. He's one of the Hooligans. So Uptown, whatever that song, Uptown Funk, whatever they did that at Royal Studios in Memphis. That's Willie Mitchell's hangout where he recorded the great Al Green, putting it down, that baby making music, right? So all this stuff come back to Memphis. But I just said all this. I'm not trying to sidetrack, but getting back to the Lunceford thing. Jimmie Lunceford at his dances, sometimes there'll be upwards to 10 to 50,000 people dance. From my understanding, he'll have concerts, gigs, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people dancing, right? You'll probably get in for $1.25 or less. You get all that entertainment. Like I said, he was very entertaining in person. So you got to think about it. These guys were young, athletic men. They had to dance, they sing, they'll tell jokes, they'll throw their trumpets in the air and play where they and catch it and play where they left off at. Precision, right? Very exact, very disciplined. Duke and them wasn't doing that. Them guys would come in sleepy, drunk, drugged out. Nobody was doing what Lunceford was doing. Unfortunately, Lunceford was kind of like a tightwad with his money when it came to paying people. He didn't want to pay the band. He didn't want to give out raises for whatever reason. But what's interesting about Lunceford, around the time of his death, he was looking for real estate to buy somewhere in the country to start a retirement community for Black musicians. So think about this. Jimmie Lunceford was truly a social worker. He was a gifted musician who was a social worker who believed in investing in people. And, he was looking for real estate to start a retirement community for Black musicians. And also, he would give away a lot of money, which is interesting. Like, he wasn't paying his band members like they should have been paid, how they felt they should have been paid. But that's not the only complaint. You have people in Duke Ellington band that have been with him for decades. They complain about Duke, the maestro, not paying them for what they worth, for him taking ideas. You made it a hot line, I made it a hot song. They actually was humming stuff, and he would take the hum and make it to a masterpiece. But yet they feel like, you owe us royalties, Duke. So you always gonna have people complain about, not getting compensated. It's like Scottie Pippen. He's gonna complain about not getting his compensation. But what I'm saying is Jimmie Lunceford loved his people. He loved Black people. And he would spend all this money around the country, especially in the South. He would spend money on music education programs for Black children. This is something he was willing to do, didn't care about getting credit for. So this guy was a unique guy. And that's why I say he should be better remembered, man. How can we forget a person that loved us like this? But let's fast forward to how he died. July 12th, 1947, Seaside, Oregon. Jimmie Lunceford was getting ready to play a concert date at the Bungalow. Very popular venue. People like Fats Waller, Cab Calloway, Duke, and all of them will come through those places like that up in Oregon. The issue with Oregon, we gotta understand, because y'all always talking about Mississippi this and that, Alabama this and that, Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida. Malcolm told us, Malcolm X said anything south of Canada is Mississippi. Mississippi is not just Mississippi by itself, the whole nation of Mississippi. Those who know. Those who don't, be open to doing your own research. Google is your friend of me. Google is your friend of me. Google is your friend of me. So is Chat GPT. Chat GPT is your friend of me. Friend of me. What about your friend of me's? Okay, Oregon became a state in America, in United States of America, back in 1859. Oregon is the only state, hear me well, Oregon is the only state that had in its constitution that Black American Native people could not live, work, or own property there. Let me say it again. Oregon, this is 2 years before the American Civil War, was the only state that had in its constitution, when it became a state back in 1859, that Black folks could not live, work, or own property in the state of Oregon. Now, mind you, Lewis and Clark first saw the Pacific Ocean. A lot of people say they saw it they actually saw it at Seaside, Oregon. They actually saw the real Pacific Ocean at Seaside, Oregon. and they had a black guy with them. So y'all keep on talking about that Trump and them can erase black history. Cannot erase black history, because American history is actually black history. All of American history, all of it, all of it. You ain't gonna never convince me that a white boy named Eli Whitney, a privileged white boy named Eli Whitney, invented the cotton gin. Why would he invent something to make it easier for enslaved people to do their work? People engage in work and problem solving wouldn't invent something like that. Not nobody got, living a life of luxury and leisure. Get real. And even Jack Daniels, Uncle Nearest, right? Shit, like that Will Smith movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance. We always been magical Negroes. I would think about that, The Legend of Bagger Vance. How in the hell Will Smith was able to walk around Georgia without getting lynched back in the day? He was Matt Damon's shadow, right? He was his goth whisperer. But how the hell he would walk around? He had to be magical, right? People getting lynched, Mary Turner, Sam Hoes, all these black folks getting lynched. But Jack Johnson was a magical Negro. The white folks wouldn't touch Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson could actually go on a boating trip with white people, like a place like Horn Island, and he could come back with no scratch on him. That's who Jack Johnson was. When Jack Johnson was fighting, they'll play his fight films in movie theaters. White folks will get so upset, they started lynching black people. They started creating race riots because a black man was whooping the great white hope assets on celluloid. Not even in person. They would get mad. Jack Johnson had no fear, man. Jack Johnson was a different dog. You understand? Jack Johnson was like, he'll drive 100 miles through the Georgia woods, going past lynched bodies probably, and then telling the police officer, I'm gonna give you $50 back. I'm gonna speed back this biatch again. I'm gonna come back through here speeding. That man was on something different. Texas boy, Galveston Giant. But getting back, walking back to Oregon. Oregon has started having black people come up there until 1926. They finally cleaned up the language of the Constitution, I believe, back in 2002. They finally got rid of some of that harsh language about not allowing black people to come into their borders. I will tell you this. No, it's funny. They send Ja Morant from the blackest city in America always to the whitest place in America. Ja Morant is on his best behavior up in Oregon. I seen some of the footage. He on his best behavior because it's like, Nike's headquarters in Oregon, right? But I'll tell you this about Oregon. Oregon is a beautiful state. I went there 9 years ago to trace the last steps and days of Jimmie Lunceford, and I was pleasantly surprised. It wasn't a lot of black people up in Oregon. It's not a lot of us, but I didn't feel it was beautiful. Like going through Portland, very scenic, very clean. It's a very clean city. Driving to the coast to get the seaside, to be at the place where Jimmie Lunceford lost his life under questionable circumstances. Beautiful ride through forest. It was an amazing scenic ride. I was taking it all in. It was so relaxing and calming and cool. And this really, I see why white folks wanted Oregon and the Pacific Northwest to themselves. It's just gorgeous. I would suggest anybody who have never been out to the Pacific Northwest, please give it a try. I would go in the summer months, like summer, maybe fall. I can imagine driving through the forest in the fall would be an incredible scenic view. But I went to the resort town on the 70th anniversary week of the mysterious death of Jimmie Lunceford. They did a story on me. The local newspaper there did a story on me. The guy who runs the paper is R.J. Marks. He's actually a New York transplant and a jazz musician. And I got in touch with him because I saw his Huffington Post article he wrote a couple of months before, back in 2017, talking about the mysterious death of Jimmie Lunceford. So I went to his newspaper offices, told him why I was in town, all this stuff like that, just tracing the final steps of this master musician, this master teacher. So, what's interesting is I was able to locate the buildings, like where the restaurant used to be at, that he allegedly ate the tainted beef sandwich. Think about what's going on with Taco Bell or Taco Hell right now. So imagine how the food could have been back in 1940s, 47. We got, whatever, but it's interesting. But story is Jimmie Lunceford and his band came to town to play the Bungalow on July the 12th, 1947. They went to a restaurant to try to get some hamburgers. They wanted to eat some hamburgers, allegedly. The waitress at the restaurant said, "We can't serve Negroes. We don't serve Negroes." And Jimmie Lunceford got upset, allegedly, according to some eyewitness testimony. Jimmie Lunceford got upset about it. He said, "This ain't the South. You got to serve us." Something like that. Like, this ain't the South. But Malcolm told us anything south of Canada is Mississippi. But he said, "This ain't below Dixie line. Y'all got to serve us." But Portland said black folks don't even supposed to be there. They shouldn't be in Oregon asking to be served, because according to the state constitution, black folks can't be here. But black folks started coming to Oregon actually in 1926, and more started coming to Oregon because the wartime industry during World War II back in the 40s. So more black folks started coming. So I guess those laws were kind of lax. The Constitution was not respected for keeping blacks out. But Jimmie demanded to be served. So I believe either the manager or owner of the restaurant was consulted. He told his people to serve them, allegedly. And they wanted hamburgers, but allegedly they didn't have any hamburgers. They just have beef sandwiches. Now, I'm actually going to read some contemporary newspapers from back in the day that tells a different perspective on things. Like the black media, they had a lot of questions that went unanswered. And I'm going to talk about this thing because it's like I connected to the Nolan. I know I haven't talked about Nolan Wells, right? Talked about him a little bit, but I'm trying to paint this picture on Lunceford and talk about what happened to him, which is fascinating. What we don't know what really happened. We just know he dead. So they got served. Most of the band ate the food, from my understanding. Jimmie Lunceford allegedly was complaining about aches all over his body. He was aching all over his body, allegedly. He also had some edema going on in legs, from my understanding. You traveling a lot, you sitting down, traveling, moving around, whatever. And you got, So he agreed to sign some autographs at a record shop nearby. Everything is in close proximity of each other. Like the restaurant where it used to be, that building still exists. Where the record shop used to be, that building still exists. And where the concert venue was, the Bungalow, that building still exists. It's no longer like a concert hall, it's a mall. So where the stage probably would have been is a horse carousel. At least that's what it was back in 2017 when I went there. About 70 years after Jimmie Lunceford's questionable death. So Jimmie Lunceford allegedly was signing autographs at the record shop. He was about to sign on the wall of the record shop, and he collapsed. Allegedly, they rushed him to the hospital, but on the way to the hospital, or even at the record shop, he transitioned to a righteous ancestor. So the band don't even know all this happening. They're at the venue waiting for Jimmie Lunceford to come through the door to start, but they just start without him. And a lot of people was noticing that was unusual. And also, from my understanding, allegedly, they was turning away black people who wanted to come to the dance. Like I said, Jimmie Lunceford was the #1 band for black people back in the 40s. People love Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion of the world. His favorite black band, his favorite swing band wasn't Duke or Count or Cap or Andy Kirk. It was Jimmie Lunceford. They actually was real good friends, him and Joe Louis. But his favorite band was Jimmie Lunceford. You can look this up in contemporary newspaper accounts where Joe Louis sing the praises of the Jimmie Lunceford Orchestra. But the band said, we're going to keep on playing. We're going to wait till the boss get here and tell them about how they treating our people at the door. Now, I had talked to a woman who actually was there that night, a white woman who's a native to Seaside, Oregon. She said she did not notice anybody being turned away because of color. Like she said she didn't notice that, but she's a young white teenager, whatever how old she was, a young white woman. I don't think long she got in. I'm not saying that she was. People don't really, black people, we deal with a lot of stuff that sometimes our so-called white allies may not understand what we go through. They can't really relate to what we go through in this country, being a black American native or a person of color. So according to her, she didn't see nothing going on. But according to other band members, they heard that people being turned away that were black from the dance. But anyway, they were professional. They kept on with the show, even though the maestro wasn't there. They found out halfway through the concert that Jimmie Lunceford passed on to glory. And from my understanding from several different accounts, band members start getting sick on the stand. They start running to the restrooms, throwing up, doing number ones and twos. You know what they do. They will like had stuff come out their orifices, right? Fluids and stuff. Whoever ate the meat or who ate the sandwiches or whatever it was. Interesting. Now, the medical examiner, now this is Oregon. This is a white supremacist Klan state. This is 1947. So it haven't been 100 years since they've been a state in the union. They already said we don't want black folks here. So the medical examiner quickly ruled that Jimmie Lunceford had a heart attack, something about a blockage in the heart. The thing, folks, what we got to understand is that everybody has a heart attack when they die. Think about what I'm saying. Everybody experiences a heart attack when they die. Your heart stopped beating. So that's a heart attack. It stopped beating. You know, my heart stopped beating. I had a heart attack. It stopped. You're dead. Okay, bing dong, you're dead, right? Think about it. Why did they rush it? Like it had to be just that. Why couldn't it be something else? Wasn't anybody else looking at anything outside of it? Or they was looking at this as a dead black man? You know, we don't give a damn. You know, he's dead. He's good and dead. And he's in our state. Let's get him out the state. Let's not make this a big deal. He's just a black man, right? No matter if he was a successful, famous black man, he's just a black man. So we're going to rule it a heart attack or a blockage in the heart. Here's the thing. Jimmie Lunceford, at the time of his death, he had $1,500 on his person. Like he had $1,500, a bankroll, I guess, to cover payroll and other expenses with the band. That man had $1,500 on him in 1947. $1,500 in today's money will be $21,000. So basically, when he died, that money was missing. That money went missing. That money was not accounted for. It went missing. So my thing is, even if he died of so-called natural causes, where did the money go? He had $1,500 on him, which is like having $21,000 on you today. And that money went missing. Nobody ever tried to look into what happened to that money. You know, it is said when they pulled Otis Redding out the lake in Wisconsin, they also found a suitcase that Otis Redding had that had $10,000 in it. Otis Redding allegedly had $10,000 in a suitcase he probably made in one night or two nights of performing. The people who recovered his body, they said they turned the suitcase with $10,000 into the authorities, to the police. Police said they never got the suitcase. You know, I think policemen back then was making like a $5,000 a year. So this dude had a suitcase with $10,000 in it back in 1967. But my thing is, there's a crime that's been committed, even if it's not the murder, it's the theft of $1,500, which would be $21,000 in today's money. What happened to that money? Could Jimmie Lunceford have been targeted for his bankroll? Is possible. Why not? The thing about it is with Jimmie Lunceford, right? Like I said, he was a big deal. He had 2 funerals. He had one. And the thing about Jimmie Lunceford, he had one up in New York. The one in New York brought out the black elite of the Hollywood, entertainers, all the great entertainers, like people like Sammy Davis Jr. or Pearl Bailey or something like Bill Bojangles Robinson. They all paid their respects to Jimmie Lunceford. Jimmie Lunceford, at the time of his death, I believe he was living in White Plains, New York, had a big house in White Plains, New York. His neighbors included the great Hazel Scott, the great Representative Adam Clayton Powell Jr., the pastor of Abyssinia Baptist Church up in Harlem, a mega church. You know, he was a superstar, political superstar, powerful figure in the black community in Black America, the Right Reverend Representative Adam Clayton Powell Jr. and his wife Hazel Scott, and one of the Nicholas brothers was one of his neighbors. I had a chance to talk to one of Jimmie Lunceford's nephews who tracked me down in 2020 during the COVID shutdown. He's retired. He's a lawyer. He's over actually Jimmie Lunceford estate. He doesn't live in Memphis. He lives out in the Northeast. And he was telling me about when his sister and he would visit Jimmie Lunceford and his aunt. No, Jimmie Lunceford was his uncle by marriage. He was married to Crystal Tully. Crystal Tully was his mama's sister. Beautiful women in that family. They would visit with the Luncfords. They would stay in White Plains, New York. He told me how Jimmie Lunceford would take him riding on his Harley Davidson. Jimmie Lunceford was an interesting dude. He had him a Harley Davidson. He said they would be driving around the neighborhood, the community. He'll be, riding, holding on for dear life to Jimmie Lunceford, and he was riding his Harley Davidson. Then he talked about the time where Jimmie Lunceford took him and his sister up in the airplane, and they had to come back down because his sister started crying. She didn't like being up in the air, but he enjoyed it. So he was about maybe 7 years old or something like that when Jimmie Lunceford passed on. So he actually was given Jimmie Lunceford's alto saxophone by his aunt. And when he went to college, his mama gave away the saxophone. I was like, what? Your mama did what? Yeah, he said, I went to college and I came back home. The saxophone was gone. You know how much that saxophone might be worth? The fact that that was his saxophone, because Jimmie Lunceford was he was a music prodigy. He could play all these instruments and stuff, but most of his main instrument was his band. But he could play, a lot of different instruments. He was gifted like that. But he was known as the alto saxophonist. So his mama gave it away or threw it away or something. It was weird. But anyway, he's over the estate for Lunceford's estate. His aunt left the estate, the Lunceford estate, to him. So I'm gonna see if I can get back in touch with him. I talked to him a couple of times not too long ago. But it's another story altogether. But so they had this big funeral up in New York. All the who's who of the black world came out, a black entertainment world came out, and then they had his funeral down in Memphis where his inner circle, his people came out. So from my understanding, about 5,000 people came to the funeral for Jimmie Lunceford in Memphis. They had a procession from S.W. Qualls funeral home. Now, that funeral home actually still exists. I pass by it all the time because it's near where I live. There are a lot of historical black places in Memphis, but Memphis is one of them cities like that. But it was known as S.W. Qualls back in the day, but they had him lying in state at that funeral home. And then they, led a procession up Crump Boulevard, or I guess it used to be known as Iowa Street or something like I don't know, but to Elmwood Cemetery. So he's at rest at Elmwood Cemetery. July 21st, 1947, they put him to rest. And what's interesting, when I talked to people that knew Jimmie Lunceford, that worked with Jimmie Lunceford, like Catherine Perry Thomas, the high school student at Manassas, she believed that Jimmie Lunceford died in a plane crash. Like I told you that Jimmie Lunceford, he was known for, I don't know how many times he crashed his plane. I know he crashed it one time. Luckily, he was able to walk away from it. But she thought it was a plane crash he died in. And so did jazz great Gerald Wilson, who played for Jimmie Lunceford Orchestra when he was a young man. He thought that Jimmie Lunceford first died in a plane crash because he was known for, flying his planes to gigs and stuff. Sometimes he'll take band members on the plane, I believe. I think it was like a Cessna 2-engine plane. I don't know. You could look it up online. And I also heard a story, a big Jimmie Lunceford fan. He told me a story where he believed that Jimmie Lunceford was killed at the Cotton Club by gangsters for rights to his music. Think about what I just said. He believed that Jimmie Lunceford was assassinated or murdered at the Cotton Club for the rights to his music. And I'm gonna tell you why that's interesting. Jimmie Lunceford was very popular. Like they would use his music in cartoons. Like it was a song, "If I Had Rhythm in My Nursery Rhyme." They actually did a cartoon. And they used the song "If I Had Rhythm in My Nursery Rhyme." And Jimmie Lunceford actually sued Decca Records back in the day for royalties they were withholding. This is before like Sam Cooke or Ruth Brown or Otis Redding, Prince, Michael Jackson. He took Decca Records to court for royalties that was owed to him. Because he was a very popular band back in the day. So Jimmie Lunceford also did things where he was like one of the kings of the Chitlin circuit. He would go to places, and I believe one of the reasons why he did that, he didn't like to be working for the gangsters. He didn't want the gangsters all in his business like that. The Cotton Club was a gangster place. Matter of fact, before it was owned by the gangsters, the Cotton Club used to be owned by heavyweight champion Jack Johnson. Just bringing up Jack Johnson again. Jack Johnson actually sold the Cotton Club to the Irish gangster known as Oni Madden, who was known as the Killer. That was his nickname, Oni Madden, the Killer. He actually brought the Cotton Club from Jack Johnson, the heavyweight champion. great, you know. And you know, in the Cotton Club, they had a rule where black folks could be the entertainment, but they could never be the guest. There was always the help, but it was never the helped. There was always the help. So you could be a black person, you could not come to the Cotton Club unless you was entertaining white people. So that was a weird setup. But Jimmie Lunceford was very popular at the Cotton Club for a well-respected period of time. But he was a master of the chitlin circuit, and I believe that's why he had so much popularity among black people, because he would go to the places where a lot of other people wouldn't go to entertain black people. Like, I read an article some years ago that Jimmie Lunceford was like the #1 band for black people in West Virginia. Like, Jimmie Lunceford would come to West Virginia, pack the place out. So you think about West Virginia, you ain't think about black folks, but black folks love Jimmie Lunceford in those type of places. He'll go to those places and play his heart out, him and his band. So, yeah, it was like, even then with Nolan Wells, we don't know how he passed on, right? People have these different theories. Same with Lunceford. You know, people have things where they thought he died in a plane crash. No, and from my understanding, he did die in Seaside. You know, it's been documented that he was in Seaside when he died, based on contemporary reports and other people. But also, band members question how he would die. A lot of people think he was murdered. And like I said, even if we don't believe he was murdered, it was a crime committed simply for the fact that his money went missing. He had $1,500 on him, and all that went missing. It's never been accounted for. So what happened to the $1,500? That is a mystery in itself. So 3 years ago, I was invited by Lunceford's family to speak at their family reunion down in Mississippi in Tupelo. It was interesting. I gave them information that they wasn't privy to. It's interesting when I deal with people's families, like the people that I'm really into, that I research, that I present to you all. A lot of times their family ain't feeling it. They not into it like I'm into it. They don't really understand the importance of honoring their people. They don't understand that it's an honor and privilege to be related to people like that, to have these stories be a part of family reunions and narratives. Like, you got this amazing person that's in your bloodline, and yet y'all don't even acknowledge how exceptional this person was. Y'all don't even understand the gift this person was, and how it could serve as an inspiration for how you should show up in your life. And so anyway, I started talking to some of the family members. I said, you know what? Do y'all think that it was foul play with your relative? They said, yeah. I said, do y'all think y'all should exhume the body? And some of them said, yeah, I think the body should be exhumed. So my thing is, why not? Why not exhume Jimmie Lunceford? Give him an autopsy. Give him a proper autopsy. My thing is this, though. Jimmie Lunceford been dead since July 1947. What is really left? I don't think there's a heart left to examine. The blood vessels, the heart is probably all gone, right? Because they say he died of a heart attack. So we can't even look at if he died of a heart attack or not based on his heart, because it's no longer there. You know, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But what could remain is bone fragments, you know, skull, teeth, hair, nails. You could test those things for certain levels of, you know, if it's like arsenic in it, you know, high levels of arsenic, that stuff could still be found. But also, you got to make sure you understand the chemicals that were used to embalm Jimmie Lunceford's body. Now, I'm a macabre, morbid type of dude. I would like to be a part of that exhumation and look at, you know, see what they find. I'm just curious myself. I'm one of the dudes that like hang around cemeteries and having lunch and being there for hours, meditating and connecting with the ancestors, because the dead is never dead, the past is never past, and energy never dies. And I think people will be getting spooky, and they be boo spooky. This stuff ain't really spooky to me. It's like part of the circle and cycle of life. Once you start understanding what this thing really is, you don't really be afraid of death like that. Because you know death is not the end. For Nolan Wells, death is not the end. For Emmett Till, for Jimmie Lunceford, death is not the end. It's just a different part of the journey. So, yeah, I think he should be exhumed, and they should do an autopsy and test for, you know, traces of poison or whatever. Because I know I talked to the great jazz historian and radio personality, Grammy Award-winning Phil Shapp. He's no longer with us, but what I did was He used to do this great Charlie Parker radio show up at Columbia University. He was doing that for decades, but he's won Grammys for liner notes to albums that he wrote. He is the cousin of Dick Schaap, the award-winning sports journalist. So he runs in their family. But I had a chance to meet him in person. What I did was I caught him before he left off the air. He was playing some Charlie Parker music at Columbia. I caught the subway up to Columbia, surprised him with a Jimmie Lunceford Legacy Award. So, he shouted me out, I think, on the show. He acknowledged me being there. And after the show wrapped up, he gave me a few minutes of his time. And because he was a pen pal to Jimmie Lunceford's band drummer, Jimmy Crawford. That was one of his pen pals. Jimmy Crawford was one of the most underrated and influential swing band drummers of the 30s and 40s. He influenced a lot of people. And he was a brother from Memphis that joined Jimmie Lunceford when he was still a high school person. Jimmie Lunceford is credited to being, I would say he's the first high school jazz band director. And he's the father of jazz studies in a formal educational setting, because the first band was actually created by the great educator G.P. Hamilton at Kortrijk High School, which is known as Booker T. Washington High School. Back in 1900, they were playing like ragtime and stuff like that. But that was the first band in a black high school in Memphis. It's Kortrijk. But Jimmie Lunceford, I would say he's the first jazz high school band director, and he's the father of jazz studies anywhere in the world. In Memphis at Manassas High School, which was not the first black high school in Memphis. It's Kortrijk, which became Booker T. Washington High School. But Manassas High School was the first fully accredited black high school in Shelby County, Tennessee. It was a Rosenwald school. Julius Rosenwald, the Jewish philanthropist, he gave a lot of money to Manassas to help it become a world, that's a great school. Like when I say fully accredited, I mean it ran from 9th to 12th grade, whereas Kortrijk, which became Booker T. Washington, started from 9th to 11th grade. And longtime principal at Booker T. Washington High School was Blair T. Hunt. Interesting character. His granddaughter actually had a baby with Mick Jagger. This is Memphis. Blair T. Hunt was the right-hand man to Boss Crump when it came to black life in Memphis. He was kind of like one of Trump's lieutenants in the black community. He was a high yellow brother. He was also a minister at Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church. But he has an interesting story. He's also buried in Elmwood Cemetery. A lot of black history from Memphis is buried in Elmwood Cemetery. But his granddaughter actually used to sing as backup for Mick Jagger or something like that, and they had a baby together. So everything comes back to Memphis. Even Mick Jagger had to give him a black woman from Memphis to be a part of the culture. So anyway, something like that. I think she was like a backup singer for him, something to that effect. But anyway, getting back to the Lunceford thing, I agree. I said the family, I should like petition to get his body examined and see what y'all find out. Because if y'all really believe yourselves that he was actually met with foul play, one thing is like, his money went missing. All that money went missing. That's a robbery. That's a crime in itself that his money went missing like that. Kind of like with Nolan Wells. The boys had his phone and they had the keys to his truck, but they wasn't trying to return it to the family. That's kind of like a crime. Like, were they trying to hold on? Why are you holding on to the man's phone and his keys to his truck? What happened to Jimmie Lunceford's money? So I want to know people, man. I'm a weirdo. Yes. Okay. I admit, but it's fascinating to me that, let's say his body was exhumed and it is discovered that he had trace elements. Getting back to Phil Schaap, the reason why I brought him up, we talked about Lunceford. Like I said, he was pen pals with Jimmie Lunceford's longtime drummer, Jim Crawford. He got a lot of respect for Lunceford. What's interesting with Phil Schaap, I told him I was the one that corrected Wikipedia about him being born in Fulton, Missouri, or Missouri. I'm the one that said, no, it's Fulton, Mississippi. He didn't even know it at the time I met him that it was Fulton, Mississippi, not Missouri. But yet the fact that he could receive that without being arrogant about it, without being like, oh, who you think you are? This guy is like, he was very renowned in his field. He's very well respected, Phil Schaap. That was cool. They let me know all I need to know about him. because I was the one that corrected that, because I actually went to historic marker unveiling at Fulton when they did it back in 2011. And actually, he's not from Fulton. He's actually from Evergreen, outside of Fulton. But I guess it's like the brother who won the Super Bowl MVP this year, who's from Arlington and not Memphis. I guess, you know, whatever the nearest big city is, you claim it. So anyway, funny how knowledge works, doesn't it? But he said allegedly that there were several cases at the time of people getting poisoned up there. He told me this. I got it on tape. He said from his understanding that there were several reports there might have been a serial killer up at the seaside poisoning people at the time. And I know I talked to some people from that area. They said they never heard of those cases. But who to say? I'm actually going to look into that. Like, was there a series of cases of people being mysteriously poisoned, or they couldn't find out what they died mysteriously, certain locations in proximity where Jimmie Lunceford, you know, took his last breath? That'll be something fascinating to look into. But that's 1947, right? We're in 2026. That's 1947. We're in 2026. Next year will be the 80th anniversary of his untimely and mysterious death. And I was just thinking about Brother Nolan. You said, Brother Steve said they have to get permission from the courts, or could they just pay for it themselves? I'm actually looking into that because I'm fascinated about it. But it got to be the family, I guess, that want to do it. But like I said, his money went missing. That's $21,000 today's money. Nobody was ever held accountable for. That just went missing. And even the black press at the time, they didn't agree with the ruling of the cause of death. Let me see something. I want to read. I can find it. I pulled up some Jimmie Lunceford stuff. I'm gonna talk about Nolan Wells too. I know people say, "What about Nolan Wells?" I'm bringing it home. But I just found it. I just want to share this with people because it's been on my mind. It's been weighing on me heavily. But it's interesting, man. Life is interesting. And I thank y'all for supporting the channel, supporting the mission, trying to get back on track with things. As y'all know, it's interesting. Life can be a lot of interesting ebbs and flows and ups and downs. But don't stay down too long. Don't feel sorry for yourself too long, because things be changing. Everything must change, and life goes on. With or without us, life goes on. So I want y'all to stay encouraged out there. I know sometimes everybody be going through something, man, and people don't know. Let me see. Okay, I'm gonna read something from back in the day from L.A. And the Los Angeles Sentinel, the black newspaper back in the town. It still exists. I think Los Angeles Sentinel still exists. The story of Jimmie Lunceford's death, right? It said that on July 24th, 1947, the Sentinel publishes an account of the death of band leader Jimmie Lunceford. According to the article by Wendell Green, at dinner before that night's performance, Lunceford told band members that he ached all over. He went on the band bus to try to sleep, but the owner of a nearby record store asked him to autograph some albums, and Lunceford obliged. Lunceford collapsed in the record store and was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. The band wasn't informed of Lunceford's death and played the first set. Several band members wanted to quit playing because the ballroom was refusing admission to black people who had gathered outside, but continued the set in the belief that Lunceford would handle the problem. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, so I talked about Joe. It said Joe Thompson. I think Joe Thomas was his name. Kansas City saxophone. Said Joe Thompson slated to head the band by Wendell Green. Out of the welter of misinformation. It's like they didn't have social media like we got back in the day, but they still were dealing with misinformation and false narratives and stuff like that. But this is what he said. He said, out of the welter of misinformation, rumor, and fancy, finally has come the true story of the sudden and untimely death of one of the nation's outstanding band leaders, Jimmie Lunceford. Lunceford, the gentleman of music, collapsed in a record shop and was dead upon arrival at the hospital in Seaside, Oregon. Death was attributed to coronary thrombosis. Lunceford and the band arrived at the bungalow ballroom at approximately 7 o'clock, and they all went into the restaurant adjoining the ballroom to eat. Lunceford ate a barbecue sandwich, a piece of cherry pie, and some ice cream. Now, back then they said, well, a barbecue sandwich, a piece of cherry pie, and some ice cream. My understanding of the story was, hey, they wanted hamburgers, they didn't have it, so they served them beef sandwiches. So was it a beef brisket, a barbecue brisket sandwich, beef brisket sandwich? I don't know. But it's like a piece of cherry pie and some ice cream. Okay. Previous to their arrival at Seaside, Lunceford had complained of his legs swelling up on him and had taken some BC powder to ease a headache. One of his band members asked him how he felt while he was eating, and he stated that he ached all over. When he finished eating, he told the fellows that he was going to the bus to try and get some sleep, and that was the last time they saw him alive. Okay. While he was in the bus, the proprietor of a nearby record shop asked him to autograph some of his records for him. Lunceford consented, and upon arrival at the record shop, he suddenly slumped over, losing consciousness. The road manager of the band was sent for, and they rushed him to the hospital, where the doctor pronounced him dead upon arrival. In the meantime, the members of the band, unaware of this tragic turn of events, went ahead with their preparations to play for the dance. The management didn't inform them of what happened to Lunceford, and the band, trained by Lunceford to be absolutely punctual, took the downbeat at the stroke of 8 o'clock and played through to the first intermission, still unaware of what had happened to Lunceford. While playing, several members of the band noticed that a group of Negro boys and girls were watching the dance from the outside because the management refused them admission to the dance. Some members of the band wanted to quit playing unless the management let the Negro boys and girls come in and dance also, but they decided to wait and let Lunceford handle the situation. During the intermission, an employee of the telephone company told saxophonist Joe Thompson that he had overheard the telephone conversation between the road manager of the band and the management of the bungalow ballroom, to the effect that Jimmie Lunceford had died on the way to the hospital. Kirtland Bradford, first sax player, and a resident of Los Angeles, called the hospital and confirmed the story. Thus, Jimmie Lunceford was dead almost 2 hours before any member of his band knew it. The band finished the evening's engagement and played several other dates, but were unable to continue the tour as all the contracts had been made in Lunceford's personally. Has been made to Lunceford personally. So all the contracts were addressed to him. He had to sign off on all the contracts, I guess they're saying. The Lunceford, and he did, and they couldn't honor it because it was all addressed to him, not the band. The Lunceford aggregation is one of the best disciplined, close-knit bands in the business. Always a gentleman and a scholar, Lunceford was a credit to his race and the profession always, and demanded the same deportment from his band members. Lunceford was also one of the few band leaders who owned his own band. So Lunceford about his business. Not only did he own his own planes, he owned his band outright. He was a very astute businessman. Okay. Because of the outstanding artists and the excellent quality of the band, it is still in great demand by the various promoters. The band hasn't broken up, but is in the process of reorganization. All the members are forming a corporation to share in the profits of the band. Present plans call for Joe Thompson to head the organization, although there has been talk of Canada Lee or Cy Oliver heading the talented group. The galaxy of artists who found themselves and received polishing in the Lunceford bands through the years reads like a musical who's who. Dan Grissom, Trummy Young, Willie Smith, Cy Oliver, Snooky Young, and Gerald Wilson are a few graduates of the famed Harlem Express. Lunceford is gone, but he left a lasting impact upon the culture of America. See, like, you read stuff about Lunceford today, like people, jazz people, academics, historians, they try to place him at a bottom tier, a second tier under Duke and Count, which he is really at the top tier. Now, I love Duke Ellington. Don't get me wrong. Duke, to me, is the greatest American composer, and I love the Ellington Orchestra. But I'm talking about Lunceford was something exceptional in terms of presentation, sound, and everything. He had the total package, and he had gifted people in his band, people that should demand the respect of not only their peers but of music lovers, especially those who love the jazz swing era of music. There is no mistake about it. So that's the Los Angeles Sentinel. Let me read something else. I think it's very important. Read these different papers. So this is from the Commercial Appeal. This is the newspaper in Memphis, our so-called paper record. This is how bad they get it wrong about Lunceford, right? This is his so-called adopted hometown newspaper, right? Death of Jimmie, and they spelled his name with a Y. Like the Los Angeles Sentinel spelled his name with a Y, and Jimmie preferred, I think, the IE spelling, but his name was James, but they called him Jimmie Lunceford, whatever, or Piggy. That was the name they also called him. That's his nickname. It says this Commercial Appeal. What date is this? July the 14th, 47. He died July the 12th, 47. Death of Jimmie Lunceford recalls his first band here. Okay. The world famous jazz orchestra of Jimmie Lunceford, top flight Negro musician who died Saturday night in Seaside, Oregon, was formed here by him in 1925 when he was teaching at Manassas High School. The body of the 47-year-old maestro will be buried here in the family plot in Elmwood Cemetery after services in New York City. Arrangements are incomplete. First of all, he was at Fisk University. He's class of 1926, so he wasn't at Manassas in 25. He came there after he went to Fisk, class of 26. After he went to school, got some more schooling up in New York City at Columbia. Then I believe he came to Manassas, let's say around 1927. So he was at Manassas maybe for 3 years, if not 4 years. But he was not in Memphis at Manassas in 1925. He was at Nashville at Fisk University, class of 26. And it said he was 47 years old. He was 45 years young. He was born June 6, 1902. So this is the newspaper getting this stuff wrong, right? So y'all be on Brother Ron's head about me getting stuff wrong, misspellings, mispronunciations. I ain't trying to do it on purpose. I'm a human, but I'm letting you know this is a newspaper with editors and so-called fact checkers from 1947. They got it wrong about Jimmie Lunceford, right? So it said born in Mississippi. Lunceford, who was born James Melvin Lunceford in Fulton, Mississippi, collapsed in a music store late Saturday, and he actually was born in Evergreen community, which is a part of Fulton. So I'm just letting y'all know this how things work. Things ain't what we think they are. And this is rabbit hole. Lunceford, who was born James Melvin Lunceford in Fulton, Mississippi, collapsed in a music store late Saturday after complaining of severe headaches during the day. Coroner William Thompson said the death was due to natural causes. Ain't nothing how black folks don't die natural deaths. We die from white supremacy and racism and other stuff and self-hate. We not dying natural death. This is not like this. Natural death only exists outside of the system. If we are in the matrix, we're in the system, ain't nothing natural about our deaths. People talking about it's hereditary. Yes, racism is hereditary. You're correct. Racism is hereditary. What's that high blood pressure? Now that's just racism. What's that diabetes? Now that's just racism. What's that asthma? Racism. Cancer? Racism. This all hereditary. Yeah, I'm on another level with it. Okay, natural cause, whatever. True to tradition, his band played in scheduled engagement an hour later. It was a one-night stand on a West Coast tour. Manager Eddie Rosenberg said the musicians would disband permanently after a memorial program at Rockaway Beach, Oregon, Wednesday night. Still with the band was the piano player who was graduated in music along with Lunceford at Fisk University. They came here together in 1925 when Lunceford went to Manassas as music teacher and football coach. Ethel Tarpley of 1491 Felix, Lunceford's sister-in-law, recalled last night. She did not recall the pianist's name, but he served as the nucleus around which Lunceford, using Manassas students, built an organization destined to become internationally known. In 1937, the band toured 30 countries in Europe. That's in 1937. And man, let me correct the record. The pianist in question was Edwin Wilcox. He was the piano player that met with Jimmie. They played together at Fisk University. So they came to Memphis not in 1925. They were still at Fisk. They class, Jimmie Lunceford class of 1926, so he's not in Memphis in 1925. But that is the piano player, Edwin Wilcox, the great pianist and arranger for the Lunceford organization. That's who they're referring to. This is the white people newspaper. They don't care about getting the facts right. But I want to believe that they did tour 30 countries in 1937. This is right before the World War II started, before Hitler invaded Poland and all that stuff. So you had a lot of black expatriates in Europe at the time. A lot of great musicians, people like Josephine Baker. They were living in Europe, places like Paris and all over the place back in the day. You had Ida Bricktop Smith from Virginia. There's Ida Bricktop Smith from Virginia. She was a famous nightclub person. She had a lot of nightclubs over in Europe and all that. So anyway, it said he married Fisk's classmate. After 4 years at Manassas, Lunceford gave up teaching to take his orchestra on the road. He returned to Memphis in intervals, and in 1934, he married Rose Crystal Tully, a teacher at Booker T. Washington High School, whom he had met at Fisk. They maintained a home in White Plains, New York. Lunceford, who started as a guitarist and later mastered the saxophone, clarinet, trombone, and flute, was a licensed pilot. He flew his personal plane wherever he went, taking 4 of his musicians along in the 5-place twin-engine Cessna. He was last here May 25th when he flew in from Nashville after playing for his fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. So interesting. I just told y'all he was a member of the Kappa. He was a pretty boy. His wife, Crystal Tully, she actually was the English teacher at Booker T. Washington High School. I actually had a chance to talk to one of her former students, the one and only Dr. Vasco Smith, part of a civil rights power couple in Memphis. His wife was the late Maxine Smith, and he was Dr. Vasco Smith, who was a big Jimmie Lunceford super fan. But he told me himself that he had a crush on Crystal Tully. She was a very attractive woman. I mean, he didn't get your alum, but she got a good-looking woman in Crystal. And he was a fan for a long time. He was a forever Jimmie Lunceford fan. He actually saw Jimmie Lunceford as one of his former bandmates, Trummy Young, in Hawaii. Decades after Jimmie died, he went to Hawaii and saw the great Trummy Young perform in Hawaii. Part of the Jimmie Lunceford organization, legendary trombonist and singer. And so he passed away too, but he told me that. So yeah, the paper didn't get all right, but this is how it goes. Like, they got this name. It's like with the Nolan Wells thing, they're not getting everything right, but it's good to see what sticks, right? Throw things on the wall and see what sticks. He said, Mississippi is historically known to subjugate black folks, and if there is any resistance, either individually or collectively, they terminate. That's America, period, though. Y'all are like, Mississippi is just like, oh my God, Mississippi just and more extreme than any place in America. That's America, period. I just told you about Oregon, where they had it in their no other state in America had in their constitution that black folks could not live, work, or own property in that state. But Oregon, that's the Pacific Northwest. And Malcolm X said once again that anything south of Canada is Mississippi. So sundown nation, forget a sundown town. A lot of sundown towns are not in the South. It's like in the Midwest and Pacific Northwest. It's not in the South. South get, people always talking about the South this and South that, and I'm saying it's America, baby. But yeah, like I said, he took on the record industry, like he took on the mob, like he wanted to, cut them out his money. Like think about it, he was one of the few people to own his band outright. Think about the deal Duke Ellington had to make with his Jewish manager Irvin Mills. Irvin Mills got a lot of percentage of Duke Ellington's royalties, and he wasn't even talented like that. They just put his name on some of Duke Ellington's songs and stuff. He got royalties out there to this day. His estate or his family or whatever. Louis Armstrong had to escape America, had to go to Europe to escape the mafia. You had white gangsters fighting in Chicago and New York and out west to control Louis Armstrong's career. You had white dudes killing each other to try to control Louis Armstrong. Y'all don't know who Louis Armstrong really was. Louis Armstrong had to go. I gotta get out of here. They trying to kill me, man. It's a story. I'm gonna tell a story. Louis Armstrong was at a place in Chicago. I think he was in a dressing room. It's like well-known vicious gangster named Frankie Foster came in, white gangster. He said, Louis, you're gonna be playing at Connie's Inn in New York tomorrow and the next day or whatever. Said, no, I got the gig here, man. I got the gig here. I got this gig, man. I'm gonna play this for a while. Dude pulled out a gun, said, Louis, you all gonna be playing at Connie's Inn on so-and-so date. He pulled that gun out, pointed and did something. Louis said, what time my train leaving again, boss man? So Louis talked about he had to go to Europe to escape these white gangsters, and then he got with Joe Glacier, a Jewish guy, really part of the Jewish mafia. That's the guy who trained Clarence Avant, the so-called Black Godfather. That was his guy. That was his OG. Joe Glacier ended up taking over Louis Armstrong's career, and the rest is history. Louis Armstrong was able to live the way he wanted to live, able to make the money. He wasn't feel like he was getting squeezed by the mob people because Joe Glacier had protected him. That's his guy. Joe Glacier had connections to the Al Capone mob in Chicago and the Jewish mob. So he protected Louis Armstrong. Now he sold out Billie Holiday to the feds. That's another story. Joe Glacier, to protect Louis Armstrong, he sold out Billie Holiday for other reasons as well. But that's another story for not tonight. But yeah. It could possibly be, but we don't know because, like, I'm telling y'all, Jimmie Lunceford. A lot of us never heard of no Jimmie Lunceford, and I've been studying Jimmie Lunceford the last 20 years, so I'm weird like that. But I just thought I saw Nolan Wells case, but that's not, what's going on with Nolan Wells with the autopsy thing and how they investigating or not investigating the case. I'm looking at this a famous black man from 1947. He didn't get the attention he deserved for what happened to him in Seaside, Oregon, July 12th, 1947. I mean, he actually, people are talking about the cell phone, about the keys to his truck with Nolan Wells, but what about Jimmie Lunceford's bankroll? What happened to that money? So I'm just laying it out there like that. Brother said, did Brother Phil jump ship? Now I got him actually on timeout. Brother Phil been letting me down when it comes to doing lives because I depend on Brother Phil to help me fact check certain things in the moment, and I'm realizing that AI is not that. That's what I'm trying to tell people about AI. Because I use AI a lot. I do a lot of things with AI. But the thing about AI is it's just like people. They'll let you down. They can get things wrong. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? But they're constantly improving the AI. But AI, I'm always challenging my AI. Like, I don't care if it's Gemini or Phil, or whatever y'all want to call it, Chat GPT or Suno or anything. I always push back on the AI. I don't blindly follow what AI tells me to do. I'm always pushing back on the AI. And it helps to keep me sharp. It helps make me more aware that, hey, at the end of the day, it's okay to question stuff. People, places, things, ideas. So I push back on Phil. Phil don't always have the right information. He just like people. He said, in regards to his money, I would question his manager, the paramedic or the proprietor of the record store. They all dead now. I'm assuming they dead. but maybe they family or somebody might be around and know what happened to that bankroll. But I'm saying that's a crime in itself. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a lot of money to go missing. Ain't like he had just $5 on him or $1 on him. That was like, that was a whole payroll he had on him, according with other expenses, and that will be the equivalent of $21,000 in today's money. So yeah, I mean, it was never like cut, but he was a black man. Even though he was a famous black man, he still was just a black man. You know what I'm saying? That's how they looked at it. They didn't care. I hate to say it like that, but they didn't really do. Ain't like, let's say that it was Charlie Chaplin instead of Jimmie Lunceford, or if it was Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller was a big fan of Jimmie Lunceford, right? But Glenn Miller went missing in a plane crossing the English Channel during World War II. I believe I believe he was a victim of friendly fire. I believe that people coming back towards England were dropping bombs or getting rid of stuff over the English Channel, and him and his people got hit, unfortunately, because they said that people actually located a plane that, in the ocean that went down, or when they lost the signal for Glenn Miller. Might have been his plane, but it's weird to me why they didn't get that plane out. If they found this plane, this is back some years ago, they allegedly found some plane ruins in the English Channel that might have been Glenn Miller's. But that's unfortunate itself. Glenn Miller was a young guy. He was in his 40s too. But he loved Jimmie Lunceford. Like, Glenn Miller was like Larry Bird to Jimmie Lunceford's Magic Johnson. They both were about the Showtime. Like, Glenn Miller copied Jimmie Lunceford for his band. Glenn Miller was actually like the Taylor Swift of his time. He was a superstar in the music industry. And also he was a patriot, but unfortunately we lost him. And they both are connected to planes, which is interesting. So let me see what else. It's interesting too, like Nolan Wells, number 9 figures heavily in Nolan. Nolan is a life path 9 like me. Nolan Wells is a life path 9. And we are like the humanitarians. You know what I'm saying? We the people that are the humanitarians. Number 9 represents the beginning and ending of cycles of errors and stuff like that. And when I hear about stories of Nolan giving back, he very much had a humanitarian, universal love type of spirit. It's like I am, very empathetic. You know what I'm saying? Like his father talked about how he went out his way to teach a special needs child how to play basketball. You gotta have a certain type of patience and love of people to invest that type of time in anybody. And people could be jealous and envious of that light you shine. You're a light worker. If you're a life path 9, you are a life worker. Like he probably was like had an old soul, like he'd been here before and stuff like that. And that's how I feel. Sometimes I feel so disconnected from people, but I feel very connected and also disconnected at the same time because of the work that I do and how I show up. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And when you are an empath person, when you have an empathic nature or empathetic, whatever nature, people could look at you as an easy target, an easy mark. There's a lot of people that have targeted me over my years, have targeted me because they think I was an easy mark or I was easy pickings. And they took advantage of me. But in some ways, I knew they was taking advantage of me. Well, what I have learned is that you got to protect your peace and your energy dealing with people, because a lot of people are vampires and they don't even know it sometimes. They're very draining. It's like as I get older, I value my peace and solitude now more than ever because of the work that I'm doing. It takes a lot of energy and focus and discipline to do. And I really wasn't appreciative of that until now, especially dealing at a time where I'm dealing with losses of loved ones and other things that I'm struggling through, and I'm still putting up a good fight, being resilient about. And tonight, I wanted to do this. I had ideas about how I wanted this to go, But it was like a lot of Nolan Well stuff out there. A lot of that stuff, like it get repetitive. It's not nothing really breaking news and stuff like that. People are inventing things, but I want people to know that what's the most important thing with dealing with people is the color of character and developing your color of discernment. And I want y'all to stay encouraged because this stuff happens all the time, man. A lot of stuff don't get highlighted, don't get talked about. And it's not about the length of years, it's about the quality of life lived in no length of years. I know Baba Dick Gregory would tell me a lot of times the world will remember you by not how you live, but how you died. Nolan Wells will be remembered by how he died. But because we do remember how he died, it's also a chance for us to understand how he lived. And I think what was interesting about that funeral, yeah, I'm gonna talk about Nolan now. I'm gonna talk about Nolan. I saw the funeral, and I think I got to give a shout out to Reverend A.L.L. Sharpton. I really got to give him his props because I think he's listening now. I always found it troubling, and I actually worked for A.L.L. Sharpton when he came down here with the National Action Network for the 2008 40th anniversary commemoration of Dr. King's assassination in Memphis. He took over the Peabody Hotel. That was his headquarters. But they didn't have the ground game together. They didn't have all their volunteers they needed to make this work. And I'm going to give a shout out to my mom, very gifted, beautiful, intelligent Dr. Callie Hurd. She loves giving back. I get that giving back spirit from my mom, investing in people, loving on people, advocating for our history, advocating for what's right. I get that from my mom. And we was at the meeting the first night right before everything started, and they were trying to get volunteers. They didn't have enough volunteers for the weekend. So my mama actually volunteered herself to be the volunteer coordinator, the unsung volunteer coordinator. She was able to get a lot of people because my mom actually helped when FedEx started doing volunteering in the community. She was one of the founders of that, like organizing people to volunteer. She actually helped organize the volunteer for Alex Haley's wake. She was over that. She helped organize volunteers for that, for his wake. And I was a kid at the time. I didn't understand the power of what she was doing at that time, but I know I would go along with her to feed the homeless, to go volunteer as tour guide with her at the Civil Rights Museum when it first opened some 30-something years ago. Time fly by fast, folks. About 35 years ago. But it's interesting, man. My mom got a lot of people to volunteer because Tennessee is the volunteer state. You know, we got an enthusiastic volunteering giving spirit. So my mom was able to get all them people together in a short period of time, and she was never properly acknowledged. I'm not saying that against Al Sharpton, but I was able to see how he worked up close. And one thing about Al, he knows how to attract attention to things. He knows how to attract it. He knows how to bring people in. He knows how to sell it to people. He knows how to sell people on stuff to buy into what he's doing. And it was a success. The weekend, I met some interesting people, and you know, it's cool. So, but my mom played a part in that, and like it reminds me of what Baba Dick Gregory would say that sometimes when the universal God uses you, the God doesn't leave no evidence that you was the one that was used, no footprints, no fingerprints, nothing like that. So it can't be about ego doing this work. But I say all this to say, like with Al Sharpton, I was very critical of some of his eulogies of people, like of George Floyd and what's his name, Tyree Nichols here in Memphis. Like, how are you going to eulogize people you don't know? My thing is that should be reserved for a person of God or whatever, or anybody that actually had a relationship. I feel like you don't have to necessarily be there, but for my feeling, it should be somebody that actually had a connection with the deceased while they was living. Somebody had an understanding. But what I like what he did was that I thought he did a great job eulogizing him and what how he included the parents. Because normally the parents and stuff don't speak at funerals. It's understandable. But the fact that the parents, the mom and the father were able to speak on Nolan like that helps to understand he's not just a hashtag. He's not just a hot news trending story or topic. He was a human being that was loved by people, that loved on people. He actually fixed his folks dinner before he left to parts unknown. He fixed his mom and dad and family some salmon for dinner the night before he disappeared. He got taken out of the equation. That to me speaks a lot about who he was. The fact that he took time to prepare dinner for his loved ones before he left to hang out with his amigos, his so-called amigos or homeboys. That says a lot. That is interesting. But also, I like Ben Crump. And I'm gonna tell you why. He grows on you. People make fun of Ben Crump because they don't like how he sounds, like how he speaks, or how he shows up. But he understands his assignment. He understands or understands his God work. It's not for me to judge him. I mean, he's very effective at what he does. He understands what he's supposed to do. I mean, we had Johnny Cochran. Yeah, we had Thurgood Marshall. Yeah, we had so many Willie Gary. We still got Willie Gary, but we have so many people, but we don't really appreciate a lot of these people in real time. You know what I'm saying? And so he fits the assignment now. He answered the call. There's a lot of folks that got the call, but they didn't answer the call. And he answering the call, and he serves a purpose. And he getting eyes on this situation that we've been swept under the rug. A lot of y'all don't know Mississippi like I know Mississippi. I actually have investigated incidents in Mississippi. Questionable hanging deaths. Mississippi, now y'all talking about the state medical examiner now that Mississippi has. Mississippi actually had a decent person not that long ago as the state's medical examiner. His name is Dr. A.L.L. Shaker. Dr. A.L.L. Shaker, when I first talked to him back in March 2011, it was for the hanging case of Frederick Durant Carter, this young 26-year-old black man found hanging from a tree on private property in an affluent white Mississippi neighborhood in North Greenwood. North Greenwood is where rich white people stay in Greenwood in LaFleur County. So this dude was found hanging from a tree near a dog pound, a dog kennel next to the levee right by the Tallahatchie and Yazoo River. The Tallahatchie River where they pulled the remains of Emmett Till out of. He was tied down or weighted down supposedly by the 70-pound cotton gin fan, and he was able to float up for whatever reason. And his body was bloated. Think about the Emmett Till body, right? They talking about Nolan Wells. Was he in water for 2 days or 1 day, like the guy from United Navy Cajun, with the United Cajun Navy? He said, even though he was flying, like he was like 450 feet up in the air, the body didn't like it's been a body that was in the water for 2 days, right? It wasn't bloated. Emmett Till body was in the water for like 3 days, right? They kidnapped him on August 28th or something like that. They found his body August 31st. White boy went fishing, I believe, found his body. His body was very much bloated. We saw the pictures of him in the casket, and that's after 3 days in the hot Mississippi weather, the hot Mississippi water, whatever. So that's interesting that Nolan Wells' body did not have any visible signs of bloating. And also they say they found him face down. So, the nurses, whatever in DC said that he came in face down in the body bag, alleged. I don't know what to believe. They said that his face was so damaged that they needed dental records to confirm. I don't know. But I'm just going by what the United Cajun Navy guy said, that it didn't like the body was bloated, even though it's supposed to be in the water for at least 2 days. So that means something else happened. So that's why the Emmett Till thing is interesting, because Emmett Till body was in water for 3 days, and you see how he looked. You see, he was mutilated, he was abused, he's beat up. And another thing about the Wells thing, don't be shocked if black people were involved in his demise. Y'all are like only white people do stuff like this. This is about the color of character, people. This is not about the color of skin. It's about discernment, color of character, integrity, and transparency. There are famous lynching cases like Emmett Till. Emmett Till, from my understanding, there were 14 people at least involved in the kidnapping and the lynching of Emmett Till. These 14 people included blacks and whites. You had 14 people involved in violating the Emmett Till, both black and white. I'm right, not that far away from Arkansas, right? The case of Isidore Banks. I looked into the case of Isidore Banks. Getting back to Dr. A.L.L. See, I'll be going, I'm sorry about that. I want to talk about Dr. A.L.L. Shaker, right? He was the coroner at the time of Freddie Jermaine Carter's death. I guess he got hired maybe like in November of 2010. They found Freddie Jermaine Carter hanging from that tree that Friday, December 3rd, I believe, 2010. And so when I contacted him, he was 5 months behind on stuff. I first called him on March the 18th, 2011. And he answered the phone. He returned my call. He told me he was behind. I said, we ain't gonna release the first autopsy because the family got a second autopsy done. They never released that autopsy, folks. That was back in 2011. That was 2010 and 2011. It's 2026. They still have not released the second autopsy of Frederick Jermaine Carter. But at that time, he was in the process of sending that autopsy results to the family when I called him back in March because the momentum of the case had vanished because there was no new updates. No, nobody was constantly updating with YouTube videos and stuff like that. So what I did was I interviewed the medical examiner at the time in Mississippi. I called him back, I think March 25th. I gave him time he said he's going to send the autopsy results on Monday, the 21st, I believe, to the family. So I gave him a week before I called back to see what he said in the autopsy results. The first one he did by the state. Dr. A.L.L. Shaker is, like he said, an African-American. He's actually from Africa. He's part Kenyan and part Egyptian. He's a world-renowned forensic pathologist. The medical examiner before him in Mississippi was corrupt. They got rid of that person. So they brought him in. And I like Dr. A.L.L. Shaker because he felt like he had a very friendly, approachable type of personality. Like he was a person that didn't have anything to hide, that he was being very transparent, that he wasn't trying to play politics with people's lives or the deceased, the deceased. He was not playing politics with their life or their bodies, right? So I can't talk. March 25th, I called him. I asked him, so what did you rule in the autopsy? He said, I said it's a hanging pending further investigation. He didn't do it was a suicide. Like how this current, medical examiner, suicide, this, that, unaliving, self-deletion. He said it was a hanging pending further investigation. He's saying I cannot sign off on this being him taking himself out of here. It needs to be investigated by the police. By him doing that, it cost him his job in Mississippi. That was one of the reasons why they got rid of him, because he didn't want to play that type of game with people. So they got rid of him by the end of the year of 2011. But he told me, and I said, man, that's not just Mississippi though. That's America. They're always covering up stuff, whether it be Marilyn Monroe, Nolan Wells, even with the Emmett Till thing. Well, y'all don't understand about the Emmett Till thing. This man, this boy, he was a boy. He was a 14-year-old boy. I mean, they already had him in the ground. The state of Mississippi already had Emmett in the ground. They were trying to bury Emmett in Mississippi. Y'all thinking, oh, they sent the boy back up to Chicago. His mama had to fight the state of Mississippi to get her son remains back. The governor of Illinois, from my understanding, y'all can look this up because I don't got no chat GPT to confuse me. The governor of Illinois got involved in bringing Emmett's body back to Chicago. And the thing was, they said, we'll let y'all get this body, but y'all cannot open the casket. The state of Mississippi said, we'll give y'all the boy, but y'all can't open that casket. And guess what? Mama Mammy Till Mobley opened that casket so the world could see what they did to a beautiful baby boy. And the rest is history. The rest is history. Well, I just want to let y'all know that because a lot of y'all didn't know he was already in that ground. In Mississippi, they were going to bury him. The truth was going to be buried. I just want to let y'all know that. And also, what's interesting, right? What's interesting, because it really throws me out. I ain't going to lie. His name is Nolan Xavier Wells. He's named after his grandfather, right? But why not his last name be his father's name, or Wansley? Why not Wansley? That's the thing that kind of like, I don't know, because like, I mean, when Tariq Nasheed was calling the mama Asian, I'm saying she's a black woman, ain't it? She black? Come found she's Filipino. Her daddy's Filipino. She identifies as a Filipino. Well, you know, you got some black Filipinos. A Filipino, everybody's really black. Especially in places like Mississippi or in America, everybody mixed with something. You said, so that means police are involved or they know who he is responsible. I mean, think about it. Crimes are normally committed by the people that know you or you know of them. You know, most people are killed by people that they know. They're not killed by strangers. That's why when somebody get killed, the first person they look at is the people closest to them. Of course, law enforcement knows. Matter of fact, historically speaking, law enforcement have always been in on these type of things, especially like a state of Mississippi. You think about Freedom Summer 1964, Swerner, Cheney, and Goodman, right? You got the two Jews from New York and the black man from Meridian, Mississippi. They were killed by law enforcement. Law enforcement was working with the Klan to entrap them and to lynch them. They were buried in an earthen dam on the property of a rich white landowner, Olin Burridge, who never did any time, I think, for his involvement in the 3 civil rights workers. You know, y'all think that, you know, what Al Sharpton and with Tyler Perry, I think Terrell Owens, they all put up some money. Like, you know, Al gave 50, Tyler gave 50, I believe Terrell. I think they said Terrell put up 25,000. Terrell Owens was there. Shout out to him for that type of support. But Dick Gregory actually started that. He actually started that trend. Dick Gregory was the reason why the FBI put up reward money to find Swerner, Cheney, and Goodman. Because Dick Gregory put up the reward money to find Swerner, Cheney, and Goodman. And Dick Gregory, by him doing that, they were able to find Swerner, Cheney, and Goodman. And let me make sure. Put up. Civil rights worker. I'm just gonna do all this. I try to get all the stuff I'm thinking about. And I'm about to wrap it up, folks. But thank y'all for being patient. But I don't know if I made my case, but I made some content. Yeah. So this is Dick Gregory. I love my Dick Gregory, something else. 1964 civil rights activist and comedian Dick Gregory put up a $25,000 reward to help find 3 missing civil rights workers, James Cheney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Swerner, who had disappeared in Mississippi. Gregory, suspecting the local sheriff's office was complicit, borrowed the $25,000 from his friend, Playboy founder Hugh Hefner. He publicly offered the money for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the man's killer. This reward pressured helped prompt the FBI to match the offer, and their bodies were discovered 44 days later. Their bodies was discovered 44 days later on August the 4th. Barack Obama's birthday is August the 4th. He was the 44th president of the United States. Who are writing these scripts? Dick Gregory put up 25,000. The FBI put up 25,000. I think that's the first time the FBI ever offered any award money for something like that. I said award, I mean reward money. I said reward. Oh my God, I need to go to sleep. You see what I'm doing here, folks? How many of y'all knew Dick Gregory got 25,000 to find? Because they always talking about the mafia hitman coming down to Mississippi and torturing the white boys. Now money talks and everything else walks. Dick Gregory did that. Dick Gregory was the inspiration for Freedom Summer 1964. The reason why I know this because Bob Moses, the architect of Freedom Summer 1964, said that. And I met Bob Moses. I met him the same year, the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Summer movement, when they was down in Tougaloo College. Julian Bond, I met him that year again, the year before he died. Dick Gregory was the keynote that year. And Dick Gregory was the inspiration for Freedom Summers 1964 in Mississippi because of what he did in Greenwood in 1963 with the help of Hugh Hefner, chartering a plane full of supplies and food for the black people in Greenwood who were targeted by the powers that think they be because they had the audacity to try to register the vote. This is months after Medgar Evers was assassinated in front of his family. So what I'm telling y'all is facts, man. This is why it's important to have independent black voices that stand on truth, grounded in justice. Not just us, but just us, invested in us. That is just us. You know, so shout out to Baba Dick Gregory for once again showing that one person can have a profound impact on everything and everyone. So I believe that's the first time the FBI ever did that. Let me see. The first time. Oh, excuse me, y'all. Trying to go with that. The first time. Reward money. Okay. No, this was not the first time the FBI used reward money. The FBI had been offering public reward money since the formal creation of the agency. Okay. During the 1930s. Okay, in 1908, heavily utilizing, let's see, payouts. During the 1930s gangster era and formalizing it with the FBI 10 most wanted fugitives list in 1950. However, the Mississippi burning case marked a historic shift for several reasons. Largest payout at the time, the FBI paid a massive $30,000 to a confidential Klansman informant to secure the location of the bodies, an unprecedented sum for the Bureau at the time. Federal intervention in civil rights. Prior to this 1964 case, the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover routinely claimed it lacked the legal authority to investigate local civil rights abuses or protect activists, making this aggressive use of funds a major pivot under intense federal pressure. So that's interesting. So you learn something new every day. But Baba Dick Gregory, the power of one man to stand up for something that's right. Also, now you can't make it up, but Obama, born August the 4th, their bodies were discovered 44 days later on August the 4th. Now you can't make this up. And August the 4th is also the birthday of Paul Mooney and Louis Armstrong. So that's a very powerful day in Black history. I actually had a chance to interview the sister who is the daughter of James Chaney, the black man who was killed in the Mississippi burning case. I think James Chaney was like 21 years old. His daughter was born. He never met his daughter before he died. He did not get a chance to meet his daughter because he was training the activist for Freedom Summer up in Ohio, I believe. He never had a chance to meet his daughter. I believe his daughter was like either 10 or 11 days old when he was kidnapped on Father's Day. This man was kidnapped by the police on Father's Day and killed by the Klan on Father's Day. Never saw his daughter, who was just 11 days old. And I don't think the Klan knew that he had a daughter at the time because I think she grew up in Meridian in that area, but he never saw his daughter. That's crazy. And she looks just like her father. She looks just like James Chaney. And she could sing. But anyway, it's Mississippi. Everybody got talent in Mississippi. But let me see. Also, the Wansley. Also, like Nolan Wells, a football player, right? And like Terrell Owens, I don't know if he connected to him and are they related or something like that. I don't know. See, this is the thing about Nolan Wells in football I was talking about. That Wansley name, that's why I'm trying to say why he's not named after his father. If that's his biological father or stepfather, I don't know. Why he's not named after him. Because Wansley, that's a very powerful name in football in Mississippi. The Wansley's name is like being named on Manning. You know, Archie Manning, the patriarch of the Manning family, he's from Drew, Mississippi. He's from Drew, Mississippi, Archie Manning. He went to Ole Miss like his son Eli did. That Manning name is very powerful in football in Mississippi. So is the Wansley name. So I'm just thinking, why was he named a Wansley when that's a very powerful football name in Mississippi sports? I'm going to tell you why. He said, yes, Nolan Wells has several famous uncles and great uncles who played professional football, as he hailed from the prominent Wansley family of Moss Point, Mississippi. I'm surprised none of y'all YouTubers and content creators found this information out about his background. His notable football relatives include George Wansley, Nolan's uncle, who was a running back for the Indianapolis Colts. Got Otis Wansley, Nolan's uncle, who played as a running back and was a Super Bowl 17 champion with the Washington Redskins. Got Nathan Wansley, Nolan's uncle, who played running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he got his father, Elmore Wansley, Nolan's father, who also played college football as a running back for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. We'll see. I'll make sure, are these great uncles or uncles? Okay, those are his father's uncles. I mean brothers, excuse me. I think those are his father's brothers. So I mean, he got football in his DNA. I'm just reading what the thing told me. I don't know, but I'll let y'all know that he comes from a football dynasty family. Like the Wansleys, a very powerful name in Mississippi football and sports. So he you know, more than likely, it sounded like he was gonna make it to the NFL. And unfortunately, I can't even say that for sure, but he was on, you know, he on that Monday he had Division I practice, right? He was trying out for Division I because he was playing community college ball, but you know, fascinating. And Terrell Owens, I don't know if he's related to him. But I think I'm gonna wrap it up. What y'all think? Y'all got any questions out there for me before I wrap it up? Let me know. I thank y'all for being patient with me. Any questions? It's interesting. I think the truth is going to come out, but don't be surprised if there's some black folks involved in the unfortunate situation with Nolan Wells. Don't be surprised because, like I said, Emmett Till, upwards to 14 people, black and white, was involved in his kidnapping and lynching. Trying to see something. Okay. Terrell Owens is not related to Nolan Wells, but is an advocate and high profile supporter seeking answers regarding the Mississippi teenager's mysterious death. The Pro Football Hall of Famer has become involved in the case in the following ways. Financial support. Owens pledged an additional $25,000 for information leading to an arrest and conviction, bringing the total reward fund to $125,000. He joined civil rights figures, including the Reverend Al Sharpton and producer Tyler Perry, in offering the reward money. Funeral attendance. Owens personally attended the 18-year-old's memorial service and press conference in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Calls for action. Owens publicly pleaded for answers and even demanded federal intervention to investigate the circumstances surrounding the teen's death. Nolan Wells mysteriously vanished on a 4th of July boating trip to Horn Island and was found dead days later, leaving the cause of death under ongoing investigation by the authorities. Okay. And I want to make sure. Famous football players. I just gotta get all this stuff out here so I can wrap it up for you all. It's been a long night, you know. Okay. These things right here, Colin. Uncles. Great uncles. I'm just making sure I'm checking on some stuff on air. See, the AI be conflict. This one AI saying he don't have no famous people or former. Yeah, these things play games for former pros. Now it's popping up. I just want to make sure. Yeah, these are his brothers. So his brothers played. His father's brothers played football. That's impressive. So they were like running backs. Okay, including his father. That's impressive. Three of the brothers out of the 3 brothers went pro. Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, he had a bright future ahead of his hand. Man, thank you. I appreciate that. You said, bro, I really appreciate it. That's why I listened to you. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I mean, but I guess that's it for tonight, folks. I gave y'all some information. I was surprised nobody else talked about his lineage of people going professional football players, like his family background. And I mean, he's like he was a special kid, man, in a good way. And we all are special, but it seemed like he had a lot going for himself. I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, like I said, it could have been black and whites participating in what happened to Nolan. Smiling faces. I want to say about one lynching case that don't get talked about a lot. What happened to Isidore Banks over there in Arkansas, in Crittenden County, in Marion, Arkansas. Isidore Banks was a World War I veteran. He was a big man. He was over 6 feet tall, about 300 pounds. Had red hair, had freckles. You know, he was red. His mama was from Georgia, I believe. I think he was from Georgia himself. But he was a philanthropist. He was a philanthropist and an entrepreneur in Arkansas. He owned like hundreds, even thousands of acres of land in Arkansas. He actually brought lights to Crittenden County. So he brought lights. He brought, like light street lights and stuff to the county. He helped put electricity into the county. That's how much money and resources he had. He created a black cotton gin for black people to process their cotton. I think it was a cotton gin. All right. Had a lot of land over in Arkansas. White folks got together with some black people. They kidnapped this brother back in June of 1954 over in Arkansas. They tied him to a tree. They tortured him. It's like they blowtorched him. This was a big dude. They blowtorched him. They set him on fire. He was castrated, from my understanding. They set this man on fire. His family had to leave Arkansas. I had interviewed his daughter. She was about like 4 years old at the time. And it's still traumatic for her because she was put on a truck with some of her other family and they headed to St. Louis. So all that land, and one of his older daughters, she tried to go to the bank to retrieve her father's money. He had somewhere around $100,000 in the bank at the local bank. There's $100,000 in 1954 money. When she went to the bank, all that money was gone. Now, when you go over to Arkansas today, you see I-55, you see the casino, whatever like that. You see these housing subdivisions. A lot of that land they built all this stuff on was his land that they stole from him when they killed him. The white people took his land. The black people took control of his businesses. So it was blacks and whites involved in kidnapping and lynching this black man, Isidore Banks. I interviewed his granddaughter. I actually recorded when the Freemasons or the Prince Hall Masons did their Masonic ritual or rites for Isidore Banks back in 2010. I said that happened in 1954. I interviewed a white woman whose family, one of her family members was involved in the kidnapping and lynching of Isidore Banks. Like, she lives on land that probably was his land. You understand? Like, I remember talking to his granddaughter, Marcelina. She believed that President Eisenhower may have had something to do with the killing of Isidore Banks. And people say that's crazy. I told y'all his land, some of his land, I-55 run through some of his land, and Eisenhower, his legacy included building the interstate system for America. Eisenhower was the president who helped build the interstate infrastructure for America. So if the government wanted that land, think about it. The government could take your land now and call it eminent domain. They could have probably got his land without killing him. I don't know, but maybe they didn't want to pay him nothing. Because like I said, I heard estimates he had owned 2,000 acres of land in Arkansas. Arkansas is a gangster place. But also, allegedly, he had a thing for white women. No, he had Isidore had children with several different women. Like, I guess he had family. Like, that's that old school, got a family here, got a family down the street, got a family across the town. He was one of them old school guys, but he had the money. But also, I think he would mess around with the white women dude in Arkansas too. Like, I think because he got into it with the whites, in particular the Italians, with some Italians to live over there, and the blacks. But I got all this on my YouTube channel. Y'all can look at the interviews I did with the granddaughter and the daughter, and with the white lady who said that their family would talk about what happened to Isidore Banks for years, their family reunions. Like, they talked about what some of the people involved did to Isidore Banks. And the sheriff was interesting because, like, in the South, the sheriff is God. You understand? Like, if you're a sheriff of a county in the South, you was God. You know everything. You control the law and order and also the organized crime. You understand? You control the shadow and the light. So the sheriff in Crittenden County at the time, he was also, I think, the tax collector. Like, they were making a way where black farmers will be delinquent on paying their taxes on time for whatever reason, and he would seize their land. And he ended up becoming very wealthy through his land. I want to think they took some of Isidore Banks stuff, right? When his wife died, she left the local white church, I think, $8 million. This was a retired school teacher. And I think she left the local white church that she went to, that she attended. I'm just talking on top. I researched this case. It's been a while, but I believe she left them $8 million. Then she died around the turn of the century. I want to say maybe 99 or 2000. She left like $8 million to the local church. That's probably Isidore's Banks money. Like I said, $100,000, around $100,000 went missing around the time he was killed. So look up the Isidore Banks case. Like I said, they did a podcast. White folks did podcasts on it. And they actually reached out to me to use some of the audio from the Masonic ritual that I covered back in 2010. And my thing is, I've been doing this stuff for almost 20 years. So there's a lot of other cases I did. Like Curtis Flowers, that was the black man in Mississippi that was tried 6 times on the same circumstantial evidence. Like he was the only suspect in a quadruple murder that happened back in, I think, either 96 or 97 in Winona, Mississippi. And I interviewed investigators, his mom, advocates, and other people tied to the case. And I remember, because like it was his former employer, Bertha Tardy. She was killed along with 3 of her employees. And the police claim he did it because he was fired recently. And the only thing they had to tie him to the scene of the crime was a shoe print from, I think, a Grant Hill Fila shoe. And it was like a size 10 and a half or something like that. Like you know, a lot of people walking around wearing size 10 or 10 and a half shoes, but they didn't have no fingerprint evidence. But the only reason they said he did it was because he got fired recently and he might have had a motive to do it. Here's the thing. I remember I interviewed his mom. She passed on before he got out of prison. Curtis Flowers is out of prison. They just let him off of death row. They didn't do a 7 trial. They let this man walk off of death row for almost 30 years on prison. He was the real Michael Clark Duncan character in Green Mile. He was a member of a gospel singing group, a family gospel singing group. He never had one behavior issue in prison. You had jailhouse snitches lying on him to get out of prison, and then they confessed that they lied on him. Just stuff like that. Some white girls did a podcast. They get the credit, but I actually went to the Supreme Court hearing when they're trying to overturn the latest conviction in his saga. They had to be about 2014. I recorded the Supreme Court proceedings. And I interviewed a woman that was with the Innocence Project, his lawyer at the time, doing the appeal. I'm just thinking all this stuff coming back to me is crazy. But that's Mississippi. A lot of y'all don't even know about the Curtis Flowers case. Look that crazy mess up. This man was on death row and they let him off of death row. Just like that. Because they had no evidence. I remember the mama telling me in one of the shows we did on my podcast and Blog Talk, she told me that when they was at recess doing one of his trials in Biloxi, it was in Biloxi at this time, because they moved around the state. They kept on moving the venues around the state. And a lot of the convictions kept on getting overturned by the Mississippi State Supreme Court. And she said the daughter of Bertha Tardy, the woman who owned the furniture store that was killed, she offered her something. I don't know if it was a cigarette or something, a lunch or something. And the lady said, I got this recorded too. The lady said, look, we know he didn't do this, but somebody got to go down for the crime. The daughter of the dead white woman told his mom that we know that Curtis did not do this, but somebody got to pay for the crime. For what I heard from people that in the know, there was a family dispute going on over the business. She was over the furniture business, and some of her husband's children didn't like the fact that she had that type of control of the business. I don't know if the husband was alive at the time, but it sounded like it could have been an inside job. And another thing, it was these group of young people going on a killing spree across that area of the country. They were killing people in multiple states in the South. That happened around the same time of the quadruple murders. And then there was other suspects that were never seriously looked at by the DA or the prosecutor. All he had the Captain Ahab focus on Curtis Flowers. And Curtis Flowers was like the Michael Clark Duncan character in Green Mile. He never caused a behavioral problem in prison. the prisoners as well as the COs, they respected Curtis Flowers. They didn't feel like, I don't think a lot of them thought he did it because his personality wasn't like a person who would be capable of doing something like that. And I don't think he could be acting for years and years a certain way. Never had a behavioral problem out of him. So I'm glad he out. You know, I reached out to him. He ain't contacted me, but I respect that. You know, enjoy your freedom, brother. You know, but that's Mississippi, y'all. But that's America. That's not. We got Mumi Abu Jamal up in Pennsylvania. Why are we not talking about Mumi Abu Jamal? Yeah, like everything just happened in Mississippi. Nothing else happened in any other part of America. It's a lot of stuff that's been happening in these recent news cycles. The Civil War never stopped, y'all. They still fighting the Civil War. Yeah, 3 uncles went to NFL. The family got a lot of money. They got a lot of influence. Like I said, I don't understand why his last name ain't Wansley. Maybe he didn't want the pressure. Maybe he wanted to start his own thing. He want to feel like, you know, if he go to the big show, it was because of who his uncles are and their success as being professional football players. I don't know. I just think that's fact. Maybe that's why he want to go his own way. Then the fact that the name Wells, I think about Ida B. Wells. Like I'm thinking about Ida B. Wells. So I said, I'm wondering if he's related to Ida B. Wells, the famous anti-lynching crusader and my Black History Dream Girl. And I'll find Ida B. What could you be, Ida B? It's my Ida B doll, y'all. So I guess I'm gonna call it a night. Thank y'all for tuning out to tune in to get in what you don't fit in. We want justice for Jimmie Lunceford, for Nolan Wells, and for everybody. Frederick Jermaine Carter, everybody, y'all. They deserve justice. This is Ida B, my Black History Dream Girl. I love this girl. I love, you know what? I would catch cases for Ida B. I would have caught some cases back in the day. I would have gladly caught some cases back in the day for Ida B. I love Ida B. Wells. I love him. You know, how do you love her? Well, you know, I made pilgrimage to everywhere Ida B. Wells made a mark. You know, I went down to Holly Springs to visit the plantation that she was born on. Okay, I went to the plantation where she was born on, down in Holly Springs. And I went to Chicago. I visited the monument. It was a beautiful monument, abstract monument of her in Chicago. Went to her resting place of her mortal remains at Chicago Oakwood Cemetery on the south side. I went to her beautiful home in Chicago to pay my respects. Also, you know, Ida B. Wells Plaza here in Memphis. I love Ida B. Wells, but you know, she was a sister that stood on business. She believed in the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. She believed in open and carry. She used to walk around in Memphis with guns back in the 1890s and the 80s. She was walking around here with guns, y'all. Ida B. Wells was ride or die. She was waiting to get down. You know what I'm saying? She was ride or die. Ride or die, baby. Boy, that's somebody I could ride and do the thing with. Boy, I would have caught a case for Ida B. No problem, no doubts about it. But she knew we want justice. She's a product of Mississippi. Mississippi is a great place. Black folks, they want to trick us out of Mississippi because it's a gold mine. Mississippi is a gold mine. That's why they ran so many of us out of Mississippi. Black folks own a lot of land in Mississippi and got ran out of Mississippi. Mississippi should have had a bunch of black governors and U.S. senators by now since Reconstruction, but Mississippi is like 37% black. It's the blackest state in the country. And y'all scared to go back to the motherland, to the root. Everything come out of Mississippi. Everybody in Mississippi connected. So that's prayer at noon for the truth to come out. And that does it for We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. I'm Brother Ron, your man. What's the word from Brother Heard? You heard it here. We all be in it to win it. And I guess we're gonna close it out. We're gonna close it out, y'all. Let me see. Gonna close it out with a tune about our man Jimmie Lunceford, man. This is We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Thank y'all for tuning out to tune in to get in where you think you don't fit in. Because human salvation lies in the hands of the crazily maladjusted. Thank y'all. I feel so much better. I'm gonna take a break. Not a break like that, but these lives take a lot. But cash app your support, $ R2C2H2. Could PayPal or Zelle, R2C2H2 at gmail.com. Could Vimo at R2C2H2. Apple Cash 901-299-4355 or join our Patreon, patreon.com/we all be. If you're on YouTube, below the shelf, wear some R2C2H2 art, buy some artivist art and gear. We're actually working on updating the website, R2C2H2.com. Looking forward to the relaunch for that website. Got a lot going on. I'm actually on sabbatical, but I'm on sabbatical from business as usual. I'm really working on my purpose right now. And I thank you all for rocking with me because it's been over 20 years. I've been going at this for 20 years for the people and even longer than that. But let's say 20 years. The We All Be movement was launched back in April of 2006. So I hope I have been of service and that y'all have enjoyed hanging out with your guy, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2H2, the artivist. We love you madly and divinely. The marathon continues, and we all be in it to win it. Take it away, Jimmie. Get this Jimmie Lunceford going, baby.
Rhythm was his business, and he did it well. Although you went to your blue heaven over 70 years ago, your songs and films are still around, entertaining another generation of unsuspecting yet joyful fans. However, it could be said that you are the true most known unknown. No disrespect to 3-6 Mafia, just rhyme and reason. Unsung in glee Hello! You started the first Memphis and Shelby County schools. Jazz music education program without help or money from the miseducation system at Manassas High. Even today, they still act like they don't have any money for the youthful masses. Unless when it comes to paying off incompetent gatekeepers, cronies, and other useless assets. You took 9 young, ambitious, and eager boys from New Chicago and North Memphis and made them anew and into men by sharing your love and gift of music. Your band of merry men, including your buddies from Fisk University, left the comforts of Memphis and Manassas High School in 1934, perceived greener, greater, and jazzier pastures to parts unknown, even to you and your crew. In spite of lack of funds, you were determined to make your mark by playing with the house's money. A true game of chance with the will to be free. Your drive and insistence outweighed financial difficulties and man's indifference. Through true hustle and flow, you became the #1 jazz band for all African Americans in the land, earning the nickname the Harlem Express. Your band started to broadcast live from the good old Cotton Club in the year of our Lord 1934, and you became the American Idol of Miles Davis, Quincy Jones, Glenn Miller, and many, many more. Your genius in action was immortalized in film while your orchestra played blues in the night. You, General Lunceford, led a music revolution in swing time and created a jazznocracy. Your band was the biggest attraction at the Apollo Theater for 10 straight years and was the first to play an integrated audience at the Paramount Theater. You were the toast of the town, the king of New York. You were the master and commander, as well as the undisputed champ of the Battle of the Bands. Your band was considered the greatest by the masses, not chicks, not dukes, not even Counts mattered. You was a king uncrowned with no country to rule, and yet you still practiced the golden rule. You never forgot your roots and went back to plant more seeds with the glee and joy of a Johnny Appleseed. And my oh my look at the beautiful fruits your tree bears. The Rhythm Bombers, Isaac Hayes, Booker T. Jones, Dee Dee Bridgewater's Booker, Little Phineas Newborns, George Coleman's, Catherine Perry Thomas, Arthur Lee's, Charles Lloyd's, Emerson Naples, Maurice White's, Larry Lee's, and Johnny Ace's, oh my! And yes, indeed, so much more. You just didn't climb mountains, you also flew over them. You flew and owned your own airplane at a time when the government tried not to teach the Tuskegee Airmen how to fly, kill and die for good old Uncle Sam. You always embraced equality and never inequity, always strive for excellence and never settle for mediocrity. Your dreams and ambitions knew no bounds or limitations. You was on top of the world until a racist, hate-mongering white man snatched your life with Apollo Sandman-like efficiency. The curtains closed and the lights went dim once you left the stage. Use your God-given gifts to warm humanity's heart and soul. And yet the city of good abode has left one of her favorite sons forgotten and out in the cold. Where's the brass note on Beale? Where are the markers? Where are the eulogies? Where's the outrage? Where's the love? Why so much indifference and hostility? They are still missing. However, one day in the heat of the August night in the 60th year of your passing, an artivist had an epiphany. Resurrect Jimmie's memory by teaching his story to the citizens who can't even recall his memory or shamefully neglect history. What can profit a people if they have no identity? The hope endures, the dream never dies, and the beat goes on.